back to the podcast that brings a new guest in every week behind the bench to talk about their hockey influences, their hockey journey, their hockey stories. It's Behind the Bench with Neil Francis. I'm Gareth Hewish, and I'm joined as always by Mr. John Donovan. John, how are you, sir?
I'm good, Gaz. I'm a little tired. Boy, that guy can talk. The only episode we've ever done has gone for 2 full days, but hopefully it was worth it.
I had a birthday.
Yeah. We're out of lockdown.
Most clean shaven.
Yeah.
Now I look like Santa.
That's why you've got to watch the YouTube version of this pod. And I'm joined by the man on the marquee, Mr. Neil Francis. Franny, how's it going?
Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Very well.
Yeah, good engagement from the last one from Vez. You know, Vez told some great stories, and it also prompted some other stories coming forward. So big shout out to Ricky and Martin Maloney, who got in touch and sent me a couple of private messages about, you know, the big brutes that I talked about stopping Coventry, going into the rink for the Challenge Cup final. I forgot that they lined up the stairs as well all the way, and they were all crowded on the bench, and there was loads of them. And apparently, one of the Coventry, it was Payet and somebody else, questioned why there was so many security needed around their bench because they didn't have much room to stand on the bench. And the guy just turned around to them and said, "Shut the F up and play hockey." and gave him like a stare. And I think one of the guys' names, I should have looked it up here and been more prepared, but it was something like One-Eyed Al or something like that. And that was one of the guys that was, yeah, that was one of the guys that he had on there. So he was there. Yeah, he was. What was his name? Hang on, I'm going to look up his name.
There was also next episode, though, isn't it? We're having One-Eyed Al on.
I got lots of questions for One-Eyed Al, and I only know his name.
A lot of questions for One-Eyed Al.
Were they the little photographers? Because the photographers had like that little gap between the benches, didn't they? Were they in there?
Well, no, they were right, because you had the tunnel coming up the stairs. And they were kind of encroaching onto the bench and that's where the door was that the players went in on the ice. So they're kind of, you can see the pictures, and Ricky shared it. You know, there's loads of them around there, so there's not much room at all. And apparently, there might have been some stink bombs let off in that dressing room or in and around it, just to make things even worse for them. So absolute beauty stories from those. So, One-Eyed Lee it was. Sorry, Lee, I got your name wrong. But One-Eyed Lee.
If you put One-Eyed Lee together with One-Eyed Al, they made a perfect double act, you know?
Yeah. So we'll have to track down One-Eyed Al, but One-Eyed Lee was our boy there, who probably deserves a winner's medal more than I did that game.
And I'd say tip of the hat to you, producer Hubs, for the outro for last week. There's some great footage in that YouTube presentation, especially Vez's story about that first goal in the Challenge Cup final and the build up to it. I could hear his story come through again when I was watching that clip. So thank you very much for all your hard work on that episode.
Yeah. Fantastic memory recall by Vez, by the way, on that, knowing that DeWall iced it, and then they had to skate all the way back. You can see Vez chirp all the way back to the face-off dot as he did, and then, of course, he wins it. Bergie rims it, and Vez ends up putting a great pass onto Remps. And the bit I love about that goal is that in the process of shooting, Remps runs over one of the Coventry teammates. What a beauty. But yeah, good work, Hubs. Top finds there.
Yeah, trying to find some of what Todd was talking about might prove a little bit different.
Also has great work on taking out 80% of the swearing as well.
We were going to use a bleeper, but it turns out it would have just sounded like one of those broadcasts you get at the end of the night with the test card.
Just a dog whistle.
But it was a fantastic episode from Vez, and it was great to speak to him. And I sensed his plenty more stories in the tank. So I think there'll be another Vez episode down the road. All of our back catalogue is available wherever you find your favourite podcasts. And we'll also get to work on uploading them all to YouTube as well. You can find us at BTB Franny on Twitter. And as Franny alluded to, there's been some great stuff on there in the past week. Lots of people getting involved with memories and pictures and things. So please give us a follow, get interacting with us, and we can expand all the things we talk about on the podcast on our social media channels. But guys, we've got some business to attend to right now. We hear a lot from Mr. Todd Kelman about his day-to-day operations with the Devils, and plenty of stories about how he came to Cardiff, but we've never had a chance to sit down and talk to him about where his hockey journey started and what the early days were like and coming to the UK. So I guess it's time to cross over to our conversation with Todd Kelman about his hockey influences. And we are delighted to be joined by Cardiff Devils Managing Director, Mr. Todd Kelman. Todd, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm so happy to finally be on the show. I've been waiting for a year and a half to be on this thing.
Well, we
ran out of gas, so it's good to have you, Todd.
I followed Vezio Sacratini. You guys went great guns with Scaldi, and then I had to wait a week because Vez came on. So, and after the FCC get done editing that show, this one's a little cleaner.
It has got the most Ofcom complaints of any podcast, even though Ofcom don't regulate podcasts. So I'd like to thank Vez for his artistry in swearing.
On that note, guys, if I may, I'd like to thank you for being Oprah Winfrey tonight, because Todd did try and silence me for a while, and I had to take a break from the institution that was the Cardiff Devils. You know,
also known as the firm.
Also known as the firm.
Maybe that's a whole different episode, John. Maybe I should be asking the questions.
Oh, that would be a good episode.
Are we friends again, John?
Well, you know.
Well, there's the pause.
There we go.
There's an awkward silence there, guys. Jump in.
He hasn't said yes straight off the bat.
All I'm saying is,
No, of course.
I'll pull together 3 or 4 pounds and send you over a 6-pack of Fosters to your house. I see you're drinking the good stuff tonight. Well done.
I'm living it high in my shed.
Well, you've got Hunter and Dancer looking over your shoulder right now. So
yeah, I'm in my grotto. It's my,
All I want to know is who's paying my fee if I'm the Oprah in all of this, because I've seen sight no sound of any of those negotiations. We'll keep those for after the pod. Todd, let's go all the way back. I'll test your memory and test your... What, when you were growing up, were your hockey influences from your hometown? What was it that sparked your love and devotion to ice hockey at a young age?
I think it's very typical. I guess every Canadian probably has the same story, right? Like they started playing. It's exactly. I remember John asked Scaldi, "Is it actually like that? Is it like what people talk about, playing on outdoor rinks and pond hockey and all that kind of stuff?" That's exactly how it was for me. I lived. My house backed onto an outdoor rink. I actually worked at the rink down the road. I had an ice rink probably, I don't know, half a mile from my house. I worked there growing up. I was a janitor and a rink rat. I actually used to take the Zamboni home from school, if you can believe that. So the Zamboni would drive by the rink, and the guy, I knew him because I'd worked my summer job there, and he would wave to me, and I'd jump on the back of the Zamboni because he was going to flood the outdoor rink, and my house was right next to the outdoor rink. So he would literally drive me home. And yeah, like a lot of late nights with the hose outside. My dad would be in charge of the initial flood for the rink, and all the dads in the neighborhood took their turn. And then when it got thick enough, the Zamboni would come over and start flooding it. Yeah, it's very typical. It sounds like that Canadian postcard image that you see and hear about, but it's very, very true. And I think it's honestly probably the greatest childhood you could have is growing, if you like hockey, is growing up in Canada.
That's super posh, isn't it? Having a Zamboni to your outdoor rink. Not everybody gets that.
No, I don't think everyone had that. Our Zamboni actually also this is how. So the lake that Steve King, that you always see on Steve King playing hockey on, the lake that he lives on, the other side of the lake is like the public. Like he lives in the posh houses on the lake, and then the rest of us had what it was called, like, you had a lake pass where you actually had to go through the public entrance, and so we all played hockey on that lake that Steve King
on King Lake.
On King Lake, as he likes to. Yeah, that's the lake that I grew up playing on, and yeah, I mean, lots of guys that I grew up with. Like that's our fondest memories. There's guys that played in this league. Like one of my best friends growing up was Sean Selmser, who you guys probably remember the name. He played for Coventry for a year, but he played for Belfast for a little bit. Played for Glasgow when it was still Ayr or something. But yeah, we grew up playing hockey on the lake together.
Todd, how you told me, talking about Steve King and the King connection, you told me a story the other day, because I was asking you about the Olympics in '88, because I've still got all those on VHS, and I was talking to you about the Big Red Machine and Igor Larionov, who basically is up there with Rick Brabant as my favorite player, and obviously they were in Calgary. And
7 minutes into the podcast.
Yeah, guys, a new record.
Yeah, 3 minutes into my wedding vows, I mentioned him.
And Todd, I'm also impressed that you know the Rick Brabant gag, because that means that you're a fan of the pod and an avid listener.
I'm a huge fan of the podcast. I'm the guy that comments on the podcast. Anyway,
how big were those Olympics for you? And what's the King family connection there?
So Steve King's father is Frank King, and Frank King is the legendary man who brought the Calgary 1988 Olympics to Calgary. And people don't know that about maybe his family. And you ask Steve about it, and Steve's like, yeah, like my dad was missing for a number of years from my childhood because basically he was bringing the Calgary Olympics, like, and that Olympics changed everything. It changed everything for Calgary. It was a smaller town, not a town, but the population exploded after the Olympics. And Frank revolutionized it. And the thing is, I'm an Olympic nut. Absolutely love the Olympics. And so Frank King was kind of a hero of mine, even though as much as I knew Steve, I'd never met Frank. And when I was in Belfast, Frank and his wife, Steve called me and said, hey, my dad and my mom are traveling around Ireland, and they're coming to Northern Ireland. They'd love to have dinner with you and Shauna, your wife. And so I was like, yes, absolutely. And so when we're heading out there, Shauna says to me, like, do not ask Frank about the Olympics. He's probably so sick of talking about the Olympics. Don't ask him about the Olympics. Promise him. Like, yeah, I won't say a word. And at the other time, like an hour into our or 10 minutes into our conversation, Frank tells me the story, because we mentioned the Olympics. We started talking about it. And he said, you know what? My wife, when we were at the hotel, said, whatever you do, don't bring up the Olympics. Everyone's sick of hearing you talk about the Olympics. And honestly, it was probably more like 3 minutes into the conversation. I was just like, Frank, I got to say, I love the Olympics. Thank you. On behalf of every Canadian, I'm so happy you brought it to Calgary. Changed my life. And those Olympics, they had, you could volunteer for the Olympics, right? And this is the big thing. They ran a good portion of it on volunteers. And if you were a kid, I was 13 at the time, and my classmates, or not my classmates, my teammates and me, you could volunteer to clean up for the Olympics. So I got to work all the hockey games, and literally I have a T-shirt that says, I cleaned up at the 1988 Winter Olympics. And that's all you got. And then you got a ticket to the closing ceremonies, and every kid I knew cleaned up at the Winter Olympics. And if you were a figure skater, you cleaned up at the figure skating events. And for me and my buddies, we cleaned up at the hockey. We got to see Sweden and Russia and Canada and all the teams. It was such an amazing experience.
And Gaz, can I ask one more, Todd, about your young hockey? Because I was thinking about this today, because obviously I'm a football fan, I'm a Cardiff City fan, and the rivalry we've got with Swansea City, people always think, oh, you want another Welsh club to do well. And I couldn't care if their stadium exploded and they cease to exist. What was it like growing up for you? And you know me, there's a few parts to this question. What was it like growing up for you as a Flames fan in the 80s? And then when that Gretzky trade to Los Angeles in '88, when the whole of Canada was like mourning, were you the happiest guy ever that he'd left Edmonton?
When Wayne Gretzky got traded to the Los Angeles Kings, I don't know if I ever liked Wayne Gretzky before that moment. And that's like not liking Sidney Crosby right now. Like Wayne Gretzky is a god in Canada, right? But because he played for Edmonton, like Edmonton and Calgary are 3 hours away from each other. For 10 years, they were probably for 7 years in a row, they were the two best teams in the NHL. And basically, whoever won that Battle of Alberta went on to the Stanley Cup finals, at least. And unfortunately, the Oilers were it. And yeah, I was one of those fans that, like, every time Gretzky got the puck in Calgary, I'd be booing him and calling him a whiner and whiner Gretzky and all this kind of stuff, everything. And then we got traded to LA. You start to appreciate how good he is. And I am a huge Gretzky fan. I would list him as like my top 3 players, but not until 1988, 89. So, yeah. And I remember in 1986, a rookie defenseman named Steve Smith for the Edmonton Oilers, he shot the puck coming out, like he was behind the net. He takes a step out. He tries to make an outlet pass. He hits the back of his goalie's pad, scores on his own net to put the Flames win the series on the goal. And that's how we advanced past the Oilers. And it was like the Oilers had won back-to-back Stanley Cups. They were rolling. They didn't win it at 86. They won 2 more the years after that, all because of that goal. The poor guy. I mean, I still like to watch it about once a year just to remind me how great. But it's funny because I don't know if I could ever. I was so passionate about that, and I always relate that when I'm thinking of fans now. Like, I hated Edmonton, and now I quite like watching the Oilers because I can respect how good they are and how fun they are, and I've been to games in Edmonton and it's a great atmosphere. But man, did I hate them! I really did.
And what was '89 like? Because we're going to go on to talk about it, but there's the iconic Theo Fleury celebration when he goes on his knees and what have you, and then '89 winning the cup and Lanny McDonald. Yeah, my final question on this. Sorry, guys. You're in it. It's like Cardiff City winning the European Cup. You're in the town where Calgary, or the city where Calgary wins the Stanley Cup. What was that like?
Honestly, it's terrible to say. I've had some great things happen in my life. I have 2 wonderful kids, a wonderful wife. It's still probably top 5 days of my life. And I remember I remember where I was. I remember where I was watching it. I didn't know what to do because I'm 14. I'm not drinking or anything, but I just thought, I gotta go. I gotta get outside, and I go downtown and wave a flag. And my sister and her husband, or her boyfriend at the time, was probably with Steve, and they were downtown probably cheering and drinking their faces off. And I went downtown and walked around and just was happy to be part of it. And I have the Lanny McDonald mustache. For people that follow the NHL, Lanny McDonald had this huge red mustache. They were handing them out at train stations. I went to the Stanley Cup parade. I made a sign that said McDonald for mayor, like Lanny McDonald for mayor. I got really close to the front. I saw my favorite player, Thurin Fleury, who I absolutely loved. I was like one of those kids. I knew all the thing with Flames fans, they're so into their hockey. We always, like my generation, we talk about the players like we knew them. Like, we don't call them by their names. We call them by their nickname. And I yelled up and I was like, "Hey, Chopper." And Chopper was Al McInnes. He won the Conn Smythe that year. And I still to this day, I think how dumb that was. Hey, Chopper. And he probably thought, who the hell is this kid calling me by my nickname? We all knew all their nicknames. We just loved them. So, and obviously Thurin Fleury, I got to play with years later. I'm sure we'll touch on that, but great experience. And that's why, that's why I appreciate being a fan. I can appreciate what people go through, and I can appreciate when, we win the Challenge Cup or we lose the Challenge Cup, the emotions that people feel. I love it. I love being a hockey fan. And it's the only sport I can try to like football. I can try to like baseball as much. Nothing. I will never like anything the way I like hockey. I really won't.
And Todd, is it true, ever since you've been a GM, you've been looking for a player with a big red handlebar mustache just so you can hand out 100 mustaches?
Just waiting for it. Every good redhead I've signed, as you've noticed, 0 of them.
Well, the search goes on. I'll be a happy man when you find him.
There's a spot for JD.
Yeah, you could grow one. Look at that thing. You could grow it.
Oh, yeah. Good one, sensor.
So Todd, you're growing up in this amazing sporting atmosphere, the Olympics, Calgary winning the Stanley Cup. How did your playing style formed during this time? What was it about defense that kind of drew you to that position? Were you always a defenseman? Like, talk us through that process of becoming Todd Kelman, the hockey player.
I don't know. I was. I know Scaldi said he was a goalie for his first year. I was a goalie for the first game, and I hated it. I was 4 years old. I played for the Bonavista Type B Flyers. Back then, you played house league, so every team was named after an NHL team. I was on the Flyers, and I think I was 4 years old. And so because I played goalie the first game, that's the number you got for the year. So my first year of hockey, I played out as a defenseman wearing number 1. And I was so mad. I still to this day, it pisses me off. They kept me in number 1 the whole year. It was so embarrassing. But yeah, that's yeah. And I don't know. I don't remember ever playing forward. I remember always playing defense. And my dad was probably the biggest influence. He coached me pretty much my whole life. And I mean, it's funny because when you grow up in Canada, like we always talk, like me and Lord always talk about, we're like, there's no hockey player that made pro hockey at any level whose dad wasn't a crazy hockey dad. Like, you know, like nowadays, like I go to watch my kids play rugby and I try to be the calm dad. Like I don't want to be the one running down the sidelines. And you look at the ones running down the sidelines and their kids are the best athletes because dads are all over them. And like, I never thought my dad was overbearing at all. I loved it. I loved every second of it. And we fought, we yelled at each other. My dad used to, like, after dinner, you know, like we'd clean up the dishes and then he'd like pull away the tablecloth and he'd draw a rink on the table. And we had like chalk talks about like what I had to do. And then when he stopped coaching me, I probably was like, once it got at a kind of like a top level, he obviously stopped coaching me. And he wanted to develop a way of communicating with me without the coach really knowing, right? Like, so he wanted to be able to like still be a hockey dad and communicate with me with what he thought I should be doing rather than maybe what the coach should. So he developed an intricate series of hand signals that only the two of us knew, right? And so my dad would stand in the corner, like my mom and maybe my brother, maybe my sister would be up watching from the stands, and my dad would be in the corner with a couple of the other hockey dads, and my dad would be like, that would mean get your head up, get two hands on the stick, play a little tougher, and get your feet moving. And so I would tell my friends about this, right? And Colin Ward, who I played with in Belfast, who is a very funny person, when he met my dad, he's like, "Hey Ross, how you doing?"
Well, the last story I heard like that ended up with Mike Danton shooting his agent.
That's true.
It's funny because I think when you talk to like you talk to any of my family, they think poor Todd, you know, like poor Todd, dad it must have been really hard. I loved it. Like I thought it was hilarious and I loved it. I loved it. I loved having my dad coach me. I loved that he was involved. He used to, so you got to remember, I lived at this, or I worked where we lived. I worked at this rink, right? Like I was 12 or 13, but that's the rink that we played out of. And Steve, I mean, me and Lordo have been on that ice with Steve and his son Carter, because Steve lives literally like probably a 50-second walk from the rink that I grew up at. And my dad like would be pissed off as a coach. He'd send me off the ice and send me home. He'd be like, "Go home, get your shit off and go home." And I'd be like, "Go home?" And he'd be like, "Walk home." And he would make me walk home in the middle of winter. And I'd get home and my mom would be like, "Aren't you supposed to be at a game?" And I'd be like, "No, Dad sent me home." And it happened all the time. And he was like so I won't talk just about my dad, but in our basement, we have a water bottle that's like, it's like stuck to a plaque. And it's like a plaque that the parents presented to him when we were, I think, 7 years old, because he threw the water bottle so many times at referees. Now, bear in mind, when you're 7, you're being refereed by like 13-year-olds in Canada, right? So there were games that I'm sure my brother was reffing that my dad was screaming at the ref, like calling him out, possibly throwing a water bottle at him. But that stuff all that stuff that would get coaches suspended nowadays in minor sports, My dad did it all, and we loved it. My friends will see my dad still, and they'll be like, "Hey, Mr. Kelman, hey, Coach Kelman," because they loved it. They loved that he was so intense. So we also won pretty much every game, which was good. So anyways, that's probably my biggest influence. He'll probably, if he can figure out how to use YouTube, he'll probably watch this.
We'll get him a crash course. We'll work it out. So, Tom, where was your junior career just before you go to college? Where were you playing at this time, and what kind of level are we talking?
So I played. I played midget AAA, which is like the top level when you're 15, 16, 17 years old. And I played there for a year. And then instead of playing my second year there, I went and played in British Columbia. So I moved away from home to play junior in a town called Vernon for the Vernon Lakers at the time. They became the Vernon Vipers, which is where Andrew Lord, Tyson Strachan, a few of the Devils over the years have played. But yeah, so I played in Vernon, probably one of the funnest years of my life. Well, half a year of my life, I guess. It was great. So I was 17. It was my draft year. It was the year before I was going to go to university, and I loved it. Like Vernon, this beautiful town in British Columbia. I lived on this big acreage outside of town on the side of a mountain. We used to hitchhike to school. Like that's how old school Canadian it was. You talk about hockey rinks. We would hitchhike to school. We would just go down the road and thumb down a car, and they would drop you off at school. And then coming home from school, same thing. You just thumb someone down, and no issues ever. No one locked the doors. Just great life. Great place to play hockey. So
that reminds me, my kid's not home yet. So Todd, you mentioned Al MacInnis. You know you hate it when I say this, but you know it's an age where maybe there's less size defensemen, but better skating, puck moving defensemen like Al MacInnis, like Paul Coffey, like I guess Brian Leach with the Rangers. Are you starting to be influenced by guys like them?
My favorite players growing up, my two favorite defensemen growing up were I loved Paul Coffey once he went to Pittsburgh. So Pittsburgh actually was my favorite team because of Coffey. I didn't like him when he was with the Oilers. And Scott Stevens is my all-time favorite player. I actually have, if you look, so you won't be able to tell, but I've got my favorite picture is the one of us, Franny, when we won the Challenge Cup, right? You see it? I'm in the office, by the way. And then next to it is when they retired my jersey in Belfast. I don't know how they got it, but they got a message from Scott Stevens for me. And a picture of him getting his jersey retired, and he like wrote like, you know, it's always nice getting your jersey retired. Your friend Scott Stevens, and I'm not a memorabilia fan or a hound for autographs, but yeah, I love that one. I got a little giddy over that one. So Scott Stevens he's my favorite. And you want to know how I got him to be my favorite? I waited out line for autographs. I was waiting to meet Brett Hall, right? So Brett Hall was playing for St. Louis. And I waited and waited after an exhibition game in Calgary, because you used to basically go to the Flames games and then you'd wait outside for players, like for 2 hours if you had to. And I was waiting for Brett Hall, and he came out and he blew me off, and kind of a dick. And and Scott Stevens was like, "Hey man, don't worry about it." And he signed my hat and stuff, and so that right there, he was my favorite. And then I kind of followed him, went to New Jersey. New Jersey became my favorite team. So I loved the Devils growing up. I loved the Flames always, but I had years of loving Pittsburgh, and then I loved the Devils for a number of years too. So
George, you mentioned you'd already kind of made your mind up during this time at Vernon that college was going to be your next stop. Was it always a big plan of yours to get that education foundation along with hockey? Was it all about options for you at this time?
Yeah, like when I went to Vernon, I could have gone to like the WHL, and most of my friends went to the WHL, which is like Canadian Junior, and I think everyone I knew at the time was going to the WHL, and I chose to go to Vernon just because I wanted the education. Also, like I was drafted into the WHL, the Western Hockey League, to the Prince Albert Raiders, which for me wasn't an ideal situation. I'd never been to that part of Saskatchewan before, and I went to main camp, and you know, like back then, I'm assuming the rule's still the same. If you play one game, you lose your college eligibility. So you can't go to the NCAA if you play one regular season game. So they're really pushing to play a game, because then once you play a game when you're like 15 or 16 years old, that's it. You can't go to college anymore. And I think that's changed now. Maybe you can play like 5 or something, but yeah, they really push for it. And I kept saying no. I would have stayed if I'd been guaranteed that I'd be there for the year. But I think it has to have changed, because it used to be kind of a sneaky trick. If they got you to play a couple of games, you're set. You know, then you can go back and come back a couple of years later. But I never played in Prince Albert. I didn't like it, and so that's why I went to Vernon originally. But I always had this idea of going to university. I didn't think I'd be able to probably afford university if I didn't get a scholarship. And I had a couple buddies of my brother who went to university, and just they said it's just like it's life changing. There's nothing better. There's no better experience than going away to university. So I'm really happy with the choice. It was a lot of fun. But I was going to tell you guys about. I told John about this the other day. I think, I don't know, about the time in Vernon. So when I was in Vernon, I actually broke my back. I was one of those kids that got like injured, and I got injured playing hockey, and my season was done. It was my mom's birthday. It was like February 5th. So yeah, I broke my back and got kind of blindside hit, and I was at this rink in Chilliwack, where I think Lordo's parents live in Chilliwack, and the boards, it was an old rink, and the boards were cemented into the ground. So the boards and the glass, like the glass came out like this, and instead of the glass being on the boards about that much of a lip, the lip was like a foot. And I got blindsided after I made a pass, and my spine kind of bounced down it, and I broke 3 vertebrae. And luckily, wow, thank God, my sister's mother-in-law, who was like the head of trauma nurse in Vancouver, was at the game, watching the game. First game she ever came to mine, and she jumped the glass and kind of like put me in the neck collar and got me to the hospital and all that kind of stuff. And so yeah, I was in like a steel brace for 6 months, and yeah, and I was like, had the whole story of like, they didn't know if I'd ever play hockey again or any of that stuff. So yeah, that was my experience in Vernon.
And was that your draft year as well? That happened, yeah.
So yeah, so I was yeah, it was my draft year, and you know, like you're visiting schools, you're planning to visit schools to go away to play, to kind of pick the school you want to go to for university. And yeah, I ended up picking Bowling Green because they're the only school that talked to me before and after the injury. So like, there was a few schools that kind of lost your phone number after the injury happened, right? And in fairness, I probably should have gone back and played junior again, because I missed half a year. But like, I didn't know any better. I honestly thought that everyone went to school when they're 18. I just assumed that you went to school, university, when you're 18. But then I get there and you realize like there's a lot of guys that play junior till they're 20, 21 and then go to university. And it's a, you know, it's a very different being 21 in university and being 18, you know, especially you can drink in the US if you're 21. And of course I didn't touch a drop for those first 2 years of university. But I don't have any regrets as far as going to Bowling Green. It was probably the funnest 4 years of my life. I absolutely loved it. And we had a great group of guys and so much fun, and obviously got my degree and everything. So
going back to your draft, did you go to the draft, or was this no?
I was literally like, I just got out of the brace, the collar.
Oh, right, yeah.
Before that, yeah. So no, I didn't go to the draft. I was kind of surprised I got drafted after that, to be honest with you, because your stock kind of sinks down when that happens.
Yeah.
No, I didn't go to the draft. I always think like, if you're going in the first round or first two rounds, but like I went in the 6th round, that's a long wait. That's like 7-hour wait, you know? So, so
was that your projection around about the 6th round, or
no, I think
would you have gone higher if you didn't have the injury?
Yeah, I think I was, I don't know. I can't even remember how high it was, but I was having a really good year in Vernon.
Let's say 1st or 2nd round, yeah.
Like top
for
10.
For argument's sake, yeah.
No, someone got a good pick in the 7th round then.
No, I certainly wouldn't have been like an NHL player, but I probably would have got drafted higher if I hadn't been injured. But like, that's not an excuse. It's just kind of like the way shit happens, you know. But yeah, like it was. I mean, it was it was funny because one of my D partner from the year before, he was a year older than me, but he went to the WHL, and we were sort of rivals, like friendly rivals, but we were like kind of like the two top defensemen on our team the year before. I went 141 and he went 142. And he said, and he went to the draft, and he said, the only thing worse than waiting for 6 rounds is hearing your name right before.
At least he could walk.
Exactly.
What did you major in?
What did I major in? I actually
away from hockey. What was the studies side like?
I majored in telecommunications, which is a fancy title for broadcasting. I have a broadcasting degree.
Really?
Yeah. So that's what I took. It's actually funny. Do you know what I started with? I started with drama, and, and my teammates basically said, you can't be in drama and be on the hockey team. So I started in drama. I was going to go business, which is probably what I should have done. And it's funny because Bowling Green has like a really, really good sports management department, right? And it was like the first year of sports management. And I remember like one of the guys going, oh, if you like sports and you're interested in business, you should go to the School of Sports Management. And I was like, sport management? What a joke. Like, what is that? What am I going to do? Run a hockey team? Like, what? How many jobs are in sports management? And like, you don't know, right? Like, how would you know?
Whereas drama, that's
yeah.
Have you ever seen how many movies there are?
Yeah, Dallas is on every day.
Yeah. So I did a broadcasting degree, and I had like, we did radio shows and we did TV shows in college, and yeah, it was good. It was fun. It's weird because if you're in college in the US and you literally can take anything. Like, it's not downplaying it, but like, I mean, because this is what I always say about America. America has some of the greatest educational institutions in the world. It also has some of the worst. I would say Bowling Green falls right in the middle. Like it's, and it's funny because I had a chance to go to a school called Brown, right?
Yeah.
And how would I know, never going to university, that Brown was any good? Like, I didn't know. And I was too kind of proud to ask anyone, right? I should have probably said, like, hey, Dad, is Brown any good? Like, I don't know. These Brown guys are all over me. And I remember I got the application for Brown, and I was like, I looked at it and it said, like, the maximum we can give you is a 3/4 scholarship. Like, because like it's Ivy League, and the Ivy League schools at the time, I don't know if it's still like this, but they could only give you 3/4 scholarship. And I was like, well, that's kind of insulting. Like, I want a full ride. Like, that's the thing. Like, you're a student athlete, you want a full ride, And so I turned on Brown and went to Bowling Green. Another solid. I've taken a lot of great advice over the years, mostly surrounding my college career. But yeah, I told Shauna, my wife, about that like years later. She's like, did you ever look at other schools? I was like, well, I was going to go to Brown, but like, and she's like, what? Who knows? I probably would have flunked out. Who knows? But I always did pretty good in school and stuff. Like I did good in school and high school and stuff. And when I was in Vernon, most of my team were older than me. Like, they were like 19, 20, and I was 17, right? So they were all out of school, and I was like, I'm not joking around. I was like a complete straight shooter, because I just thought, I have to make sure I can't miss school. I have to make sure I graduate. I have to make sure I get good grades. And then when I got injured and broke my back, the school board hired me a tutor. Like, they just said, we're getting you a tutor so you can do all your classes from bed. So basically I was like lied up in bed. And this guy, I wish I could somehow meet up with this guy, because he would come and he'd be like, all right, like, how's your math? And we do a bit of math. And then he's like, he'd be like, okay, we got to read To Kill a Mockingbird, or we can watch To Kill a Mockingbird. And he'd be like, what do you want to do? Let's watch it. So we'd watch To Kill a Mockingbird and then discuss it. And then he became like, he wasn't like a young guy. He was probably like 25, right? And I'm 17. I think to this day, I think this guy is the greatest guy in the world, because BC education system. There's probably someone's going to get fired in the BC education system that watches this, but yeah, it was hilarious. And I remember telling my parents, because my parents were like, "We got to move you home to Calgary. Yeah. We can look after you. You can get a tutor here. You can graduate from here. We'll look after you." And I was like, no, I'm just fine with my tutor, my buddy. And yeah, so that's how I think I went back to school maybe in June. Like I missed like 5 months of school, and I went back at the end. I graduated and did fine. So it's not a rip on the education system in Canada. It's pretty good.
Can you remember his name?
Oh no, God.
No.
I can't even. I can remember how good To Kill a Mockingbird was, though.
Yeah, but I think that guy's job is safe anyway, because BC is one of the areas that the pod hasn't quite reached out yet to. We got a bit of a lack of coverage there, but we got a marketing campaign for BC going out soon. So
yeah, exactly.
I just love that you haven't put together that was your love of drama right there. That second he said, "Should we watch To Kill a Mockingbird?" That's where it all ignited.
Yeah. How was your nickname Killer and not Hamlet?
I don't know. Yeah. So yeah, some good years then. Then I went to Bowling Green, 4 years, and just had a blast. Just great experience hockey-wise. Played with some incredible players. My best friend from university, my roommate for 4 years, ended up going to the NHL, and it kind of felt like we all made the NHL when he made the NHL, because we were so happy for him. And his name's Mike Johnson. He's a broadcaster now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, just for the funnest years. And guys that play junior in Canada, they can never understand how fun U.S. college is, because I'm not saying it's like the movies necessarily. It's not like, I don't know what the movies would be, and it's not like Van Wilder or anything, but it's pretty damn close sometimes. And it's just the whole college lifestyle was fun, and it was great being a student athlete, and they treat you really well, and yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I stayed there for 2 summers, and graduated, and yeah, loved every second of it.
What was the biggest lesson that you took hockey-wise from your time in college, or what did it shape for you just before going pro?
I think it's
always brace for hit.
What's that?
Always brace for a hit.
Yeah, exactly. Keep your head up when you're coming out of the corner. No, it you know what it was? It was learning to play with nerves, because to this day, I don't think I'll ever play in front of bigger crowds, or I don't play anymore, but I never played in front of bigger crowds than in college. And you're in a rink, and there's 14,000 people, and there's a marching band playing a huge song every time you get scored. I always tell the story. We were playing Michigan one time, and this is Michigan when they were the best team in the country, and we were getting crushed. We played Michigan when they were the best team in the country for 4 years, and they won the national championship and played in the final game one year. But they were unbelievable. Some NHL superstars on that team. And we beat them. So you think we play every team 4 times a year, and you play there for 4 years. We played them 16 times. We beat them once. But this is not one of those stories when we beat them. We were playing in Michigan, and it was about 7-1 maybe, 7-2 maybe. And they scored again. And then you kind of heard this hum and everyone's like, what's the crowd saying? And then they scored again, and it got a little louder, and then I turned to one of the guys, I'm like, what are they saying? They're saying pizza. And I'm like, why? And they're like, if they score 10 goals, every student gets a slice of pizza. And so then our goal becomes, please don't get scored on, because they're going to go apeshit when they score. And they scored, and it was something. I think we were as excited as the 9,000 Michigan students at the game. But yeah, college hockey is something special, man. It's unbelievable. And so I'm excited, because Steve King's son Carter is just embarking on his college career. He's going to one of the best schools, one of the best programs in the country, in Denver University. And because of COVID, he actually got to go down half a year early. So he's down there now. He's played, I don't know, 3 or 4 games for them. But I'm excited for him, because it's such an amazing experience. So
So you finish your college career, you're a draftee. Most people are probably going to think this guy's going to slug it out in the minors, and you end up in Bracknell. It's such a, when you look at it on paper, it seems like a weird decision. When did you get the call? Why did you make the decision?
So two funny stories about this. So basically, like back then, they had changed the rule. Like it used to be, NHL camps would have 80 people at them, right? So if you're a draft pick, you're finishing school, you're probably going to go to, you can't go to a camp until you graduate or until you finish school, right? So so you kind of always thought like, oh, I'll get invited to camp, and then like I don't know, probably like I'm not one of those people that thinks like had this glorious idea that, oh, I got screwed and I would have made it. Like I could see, you can see the depth chart. You're like, okay, I'm not even close to making St. Louis. I'm not going to make their American League team because they've got 4 guys under contract. They probably got 2 guys coming down, no chance. And so you think I'm going to go down. I'm going to be in the East Coast League, like for sure, right? And I just had no desire to really play in the East Coast League, and so I thought like, I don't know, maybe something will come up, right? And like my buddy Mike's getting calls from Bobby Orr and all these agents, and we're not getting the same calls, but I get a call from the team just up the road, Toledo, right? And I think, oh, this is great, and they're like, I'm excited because I'm like, well, it's right up the road. Maybe I could play. My girlfriend at the time was still going to Bowling Green, so I thought, no, maybe I'll stay here and play a year in Toledo. And they said, yeah, great. Like, why don't you send some tapes up to us, and we'll have a listen and see how it goes. And I'm like, okay. And I get off the phone. I'm like, yeah. So they want me to send some tapes, and I'm like, but I'm sure they said we'll have a listen. Like, why do they say we'll have a listen? I'm sure he meant though. I'm sure they meant we'll have a like. Why would he say listen? So anyway, so I try to get a couple tapes together because like it's 1997. It's not like we have game tapes lying around. It's not like now we're go on this go to YouTube and watch my highlights or something, right? So I see if I can get from one of the student like guys that do the stats. I get a couple games that I thought I played well, and I send them up there. Nothing, no calls. And then I get another call from this guy, and he's like, yeah, we never got those tapes. I'm like, oh, I sent you the tapes. He's like, no. And it turns out they were interested because I had a sports, because I was taking broadcasting. They wanted me to be the color guy. So they weren't even interested in me playing hockey for them. I was going to be, and I was so mad. I was so insulted. Like, I'm like, screw this. So I went home to Canada, and I just got it. Like I graduated, I went and got a summer job, and my summer job was working at this training facility. I don't know if you've ever seen them, friend. They have these skating treadmills, right? They're like artificial ice. Yeah. And at the time, they were just coming out, and I actually was one of the first guys that got trained on it, and got licensed to be one of the trainers. And it was an unbelievable job. It was so fun. So I got to train all the NHL players and NHL prospects on these machines, right? And part of that was I got to work out with all these guys, and we were working out this facility, and that's where my job was. And at the same time, Team Canada was running this like training camp, right? And so a lot of guys that played college hockey or junior, they got invited to this Team Canada camp. And it just happened to be at the same place that I was working at. So, and I think a lot of people thought like, oh, maybe they kept seeing me around the rink. And I think they thought that I was actually at the camp, but I wasn't. I was working at the fitness facility, like attached to the rink. But a few of my buddies were there, and my coach from college was there. My assistant coach from college, this great guy who I still keep in touch with, he was there. And there's a few coaches from around the league, from different leagues, American leagues, the NHL leagues, scouts are there. And the coach from Bracknell's there. And a really good guy who I quite like playing for. You might remember the name, Jim Fiorchuk, Franny, and JD. You remember him, yeah. So Jim Fiorchuk is there. And my assistant coach from college tells a story like, yeah, like, like we're every night, you go for beers after, with the other coaches, and you get chatting and people are talking. And I'd been talking to my coach earlier in the day. And then this guy, like, they're all out for beers or something. And someone said like, oh, who were you talking to earlier? And he's like, oh, Todd Kelman. He's not at the camp. He's actually working at the fitness facility. Good kid, really good, good kid for us. Great 4 years for us. Worked really hard. yeah, and he kind of is like, does anyone need a defenseman? And Jim Fjorchuk's like, yes. and he said it was kind of like maybe Jim was saying it to fit in because like he was like the one coach from England when there was all these guys from the American League and the East Coast League and the NHL, and that's how I got to Bracknell. No scouting, no video, literally nothing. And that's how I turned pro. And so I generally, as I said to my parents, like, I'm going to go across to England. I'm going to play for 1 year, see how this is, and then then get a job, come back home, get a job. And, you know, I just want 1 year to myself to kind of travel around Europe, have some fun with my friends. And and 1 year turned into now, you know, so that's literally how I Bracknell.
Maybe Jim heard that if you didn't turn out as a D-man, you could always do the commentary on the Bees games. Yeah. It was a no-brainer for him.
Price of one, yeah. But those years in Bracknell, I mean, JD, you probably got a question about Bracknell. I know.
Well, I got one because you and I were talking the other day about something different. I was trying to sell you something, I think, and you just graced over this like it was like a normal. Just something you dropped in, and I said, "Oh yeah, you coming on the podcast?" So we probably, you know, we'll skip away from the Devil stuff and we'll ask you more about Bracknell. And you said a couple of things like, you know, playing for Whistle and playing for Furio, and then he just went, "Yeah, I lived in a haunted house," and then just moved on from the conversation. Is that something you just dropped in? So I'm intrigued about living in the haunted house.
So anyone that's been to Bracknell, there's this old mansion, and so let me describe to you. I arrive at Heathrow Airport, and Dave Whistle's there to pick me up, right? Dave Whistle looks, I don't know, 48 at the time. And Whis, who, I mean, obviously we never brought him here, so we probably have a sour relationship, but Whis, I love that guy. I love that guy as a teammate. So that's how old I am. I played with Dave Whistle, right? So Whis picks me up, takes me to Bracknell. We go to the rink, which I assume is the practice rink, right? Like there's rainbows on the wall. The dressing rooms are ready. We're getting dressed in a log cabin that's attached to a ski hill. And I was like, so where's the regular rink? Like this practice rink kind of sucks. Like where's the regular rink? No, this is your rink. This is pro hockey. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm thinking, I just came from Bowling Green where we had stalls that were made of oak. We had our own ping pong area. We had a lounge with TVs. We had our own gym. You don't have better facilities than in college. And I was like, wow, this sucks. Like this is terrible, right? But I loved it. Like it was so fun. But so anyway, so we practiced it. So we get there the first day. We don't go on the ice. We get keys to a car. The car, me and my roommate Brian Greer, who's a goalie, we get the keys to the car. We drive the car. It's a Toyota, which is owned by John Nike. They own the Toyota dealership too. We get that car maybe 120 yards up the road towards our hill or towards our house, right? They're like, your house is 500 yards up the road. Just drive up that road. We get 120 yards up there. It runs out of gas, right? It's out of gas. So we walk back to this the dealership. They give us another car that gets 10 yards past that car. So then we go back to the dealership. They give us they get us a can of gas, of petrol. We put it in the first car, and that is our car for the year. No one even looks at it. Like no one says like it might need repairs. That's our car for the year. And we share it. And so we get to our house, and clearly someone had a party at the year-end party. Like imagine the year-end party with a bunch of single guys, and they lock the door on April 5th, and they open the door on August 19th. And I'm not the one closing the door, but I'm certainly the one opening the door 6 months later or whatever, right? And me and my roommate open the door, and I shit you not, we open the door, and it's like a movie. A pile of beer cans come pouring out the front door. And they told us, the Bracknell management, complete liars, they told us, oh yeah, it was professionally cleaned earlier today. And I'm like, professionally cleaned, right? So we are walking around the house, and like, we don't even want to sit down. It's disgusting, right? Beds are disgusting. Couches gross. TVs slammed over. Like the place is destroyed. It looks like there've been squatters there the whole summer. We go to open the washing machine, and clearly like the drain pipe has been gathering maggots and bugs for 4 months. We open it up. It's black water. It pours out. Black water pours out and covers the kitchen. destroys the floor. It's maggots and bugs. It's disgusting. So we go back and we're like, we can't live there. It's a disaster. And they're like, oh, is it really? Like, we had a professional clean. I'm like, there's no way that wasn't even cleaned. Not even professional. That wasn't cleaned by me. Like, that was like the worst cleaner in the world has not cleaned that place. And they're like, no, we did. I'm like, well, there's no way you did, right? So we take this lady up there and we show it to her. She's like, oh my goodness, this is embarrassing. Okay. And he owns a hotel. He owns a 5-star hotel right there. And we're like, we'll stay in the Coppet Beach. They're like, no, you guys can't stay in the Coppet Beach. So we're at practice and we're asking the guys, like, what should we do? And some of the guys are like, go home. This is bullshit. They can't treat you like that. I'm like, no, I don't want to go home. This is my only job, right? And so the trainer, a guy named Brian Miller, he invites us to stay at his house. So we think we're going to stay there for like 3 or 4 days. We end up staying at his house for like a month, maybe 6 weeks, right? And finally, we're like, this is getting ridiculous. So we go to the house and we're like, you know what? We're not going to play tonight until they send the general manager up to the house to see how bad it is. So it's like 2, 3 o'clock. The game's at 6, gets to be like 4. And everyone's calling the house number. And they're like, you guys got to come. Like, what are you doing? And we're like, nope, send Martin up here. Send him up here. He's got to see this place. Well, he said he's not coming. He'll come tomorrow. Nope, we're not going anywhere. He's got to come tonight. So Brian Greer had this idea. I don't know what, this is ridiculous, but it's actually really funny. So we always had these huge horses that used to break down the fence behind this house. And they would come and they would literally like stick their head like right at the windows. So Greersy says, what if when they come up here, we lure a horse into the house? And I'm like, what? And he goes, well, think about it. Think of how funny it would be if when they come in, they're like, no, it's not that bad. And then a horse trots by, right? And we're like, there's a fucking horse. Oh, sorry. There's a horse in the living room. And so Grizzy gets a handful of apples and he gets this horse halfway into the house, right? It gets caught. Its ass gets caught in, like the porches, it's like door, slight bend door. So it gets caught in thrashing around. It's thrashing around and it gets stuck in the door. And we're like, oh my God, this door is going to smash apart, right? We've got a horse. And for us, when this is the legit version, when we told the story to the guys, we told them it was a Clydesdale, like the hugest horse ever, right? But anyways, we try to get the horse in the living room. We can't get the horse in there, so we leave it out. And the horse, but when they pull up, there are 2 horses on the front lawn eating the grass, and there's maggots on the kitchen floor. The place is disgusting. And they finally agree. They're like, okay, we'll give you a budget. They don't say we'll fix it up for you. We'll give you a budget to fix it up, right? And Brian Greer, who's a really funny guy, we went and played the game, and then the guys after the game were like, we're having beers, and they're like, what did they say? And I said they said they'd give us a budget, like they'd give us enough money to get our own kitchen. So we actually had to get builders in to fix it. And Greersy goes, they're gonna rue the day they gave us a budget to fix that up. And they did. So we put silver carpet throughout the whole thing. We built a dance room. We bought a disco ball. We found an old couch that looked like a 1970s porn couch, like one of those white curved couches. So we had a room dedicated to dancing in our house. There's only like 6 bedrooms. 2 of us had bedrooms, and then the rest of us was huge. We put a cheap kitchen in, and so my room was dragon's blood red. It's like a pinky red color. That was dragon's blood red. His was bright blue. Another room was black on the walls, and we all silver carpet throughout the whole thing. It was gross, but it was insanely fun. And so what we did is we noticed that Bracknell didn't really have like a lot of bars, right? Like they had a couple pubs, but back then pubs closed at like 11. And so we would run after hours after every game. Like, and I don't mean like once a month. Like, I mean, every Sunday after every home game, we were the after hours bar, to the point where we had a guy work the door and take money so that we could pay for all the booze. And so like on the day of a game, and I just imagine if Andrew Lord was my coach. But we, on the day of the game, me and Greersy used to go get garbage bags full of snow and put them in our bathtub and put the beer on ice so that the guys knew, like, that was our job. We should have been the captains. Our whole job with that team was, besides playing hockey, was we have to make sure that this team is entertained after the game. And I mean, we had parties that had 300-400 people at them, and we were on a dead end street with no neighbors bar the horses, right? Who didn't come home, didn't come to the parties. But yeah, we had some insane parties, but the place was haunted. 100% it was haunted. We were told everywhere we went in town, we'd go to get like a TV license. They'd be like, "What's your address?" We'd be like, "Stanley Farm," and they're like, "You know, it's haunted." And we'd be like, you hear it once, and you're like, "Oh, that's funny." Then you hear it like literally 30 times, and you're freaking out. So we never stayed by ourselves in that house. Like if he met a girl and was staying at her house, I couldn't stay there. I would either sleep with, like, leave all the lights on and stay up all night, or wait till he got home, or like I'd be like, you can't stay there. You have to come home. You generally cannot stay there. One of us has to be here. And everyone that ever stayed there, we never told them it was haunted, but we had guys stay with us. And a tough guy, there was a guy named Norm Dezane who lasted about 3 weeks with our team. He had to sleep on our couch for a week. We didn't tell him it was haunted. He stayed there one night and he was just like, "Something's wrong with that house. That place is haunted." Everyone I know that stayed there. It was horrible. But yeah, I bet the silver carpet and the disco ball are still there.
I hope so.
Yeah. And when we won the league there, my God, that Stanley party when we won the league, it was insane. Absolutely insane.
Tom, I wanted to ask you about that season, because that season probably doesn't get talked of, because in the Super League, you know, the Devils won it, and the Devils were at the time expected to win it. The Steelers won it, the Storm won it, and they were all expected to win it. The Bees weren't expected to win it, and that just must have been an incredible season.
One of my favorites as a player. We should never have won it. Like we look back and we think, yeah, we were the best team, but like, man, it's insane that the Bracknell Bees won a league championship in the Super League when you're going up against, you know, some of the budgets of Manchester and Sheffield and stuff. Like, the coach of Manchester wouldn't come to games in Bracknell because they said we didn't belong in the same league as the Manchester Storm, because he would literally send his assistant coach, that Kurt Kleinendorf or whatever.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't come. He just literally wouldn't come to the games. And yeah, it was. I mean, I still think it's one of the craziest things that we won the league with that team. And it was. I honestly think it's because we were so close. Like and honestly, like we had a handful of married guys. We had a mostly single guys, and we were so tight. Such like one guy would go to a movie, 15 guys would go to the movie, and those parties at Stanley, as ridiculous they sound, like everyone came, everyone's wife came. We every Sunday night, everyone just knew. Like, we went to New Year's. That was the millennium. The single guys all went to London, and we just gave the married guys our keys and said, you have your millennium New Year's party at our house. And then we got home at 3 a.m. and joined in. And like it was the tightest group I've ever had. Just great guys like Denny Chassé, PC Druin, Colin Ward, fantastic guys. Absolutely.
It was a good team.
It was a hard rink to play in as well, because I remember officiating there, because everyone was over the top and down, and it really was.
Plus
I love doing games
rainbows
there.
were pretty distracting hubs, right? Like the rainbows were intimidating.
Oh yeah.
All over the walls.
Easy to lose concentration in the blue lines.
Yeah, exactly.
How much of that success, do you attribute to Dave Whistler? Now he did change around that organization when he became coach.
I think the best way to describe that is Whistle. I don't know why. I can't describe why. I've never had it with another coach. I would have ran through a wall with no facial helmet protecting on for Dave Whistle. I can't describe. I don't know what it is. That guy makes you want to play hard for him. And systems-wise, I wouldn't say we were the best. He was a great recruiter, because it's hard not to love that guy. It's one of the heartbreaking things in this job that I, like, if not to get serious, but when we took over the Devils, I wish Wiss hadn't been the coach, because it was a hard thing to tell the guy that coached me for 6 years of my career, or 5 years, and played with me for a year. Like, I was good buddies with Wiss, like, but like you when you tell someone that he's not going to coach your hockey team, you're no longer really buddies, But I love that guy, and and that's why he had success. Like, Franny, did you play for Wiss? Or
Yeah.
Systems wise, like, I mean, I'm not saying he's a bad coach in systems wise, but I'm saying I played for coaches with better systems. I played for coaches with more organization. I don't know if I played for a coach that was a better recruiter or players wanted to go through a wall for him. Like, we took the core of the team from Bracknell, and we moved basically 8 of us or whatever went to Belfast, and that's why we won in Belfast 2 years later and 3 years later, is because that mentality of wanting to go through a wall for WIS is the guys that came in that kind of bought into that were the ones that stuck around. Guys like Matsos, like a guy like that just instantly loved WIS, and it was like I couldn't understand why you guys all talk about him like he's a god, but like I just love him, and yeah, he's a great guy, and that's why he had success. That's why he was, and I think it just probably the game passed him by a bit, because he's, guys come in that are more detailed and more video oriented and stuff, and WIS was like a gut feel kind of guy. Like he coached on gut and intuition, and screaming at refs and getting the most out of players, and I'm old school, so I like that. Like I used to say to us, like, if you need to yell at someone in the locker room, feel free, because no one loves confrontation. No coach loves having to yell at a guy, but I was like, you can yell at me. Like if you need to call someone out and bitch or something like that, you can yell at me. But
he's one of those that if he yelled, you would genuinely feel bad, wouldn't you? Because like you say, he's such a good guy to play for. I think one of his big strengths was letting people actually play, to their strengths, and he had that trust in them that they could go out, so he wasn't overly prescriptive, and he was a lot of fun to play for. And I used to love him yelling at the refs too, especially when he had his false teeth and they used to come flying out, and then you're just absolutely doing everything you can not to burst out laughing on the bench.
What he did really well, it's probably like if you read a lot of leadership books and stuff like that, and I know he didn't do it because he was like doing it from training or from reading up on it. He just had this way that he included everyone. He's a great listener. Like he listens to you very well, and and whether it's fake, but he takes an interest in everyone. So like if you're in a room and say your wife's there and she's never been to a team event or anything, Whistle spend half an hour talking to her and make her laugh, and you'll look over and all of a sudden they're drinking buddies, and like he is such a good people person. Like I always thought that if he was, he'd be a hell of a sales guy, like just to come and, oh, there's Whis, tell a few stories, talk a few, have a few laughs. You just love him, and he was really good at that. And when he got better in Belfast, and him and his wife would have you and one other couple over for dinner. Nothing crazy, just no reason, not because he thinks you need it, or he just every year he kind of rotate through the team, and throughout the year and it could be you might have just lost a big game, you might have just won a big game, and he's like, no, dinner's on Tuesday, you guys, like you and the Roughs are coming over, okay, and you just did, right, and the guys had enough respect for him that it was never like you never thought like, oh, he's my buddy and he's not my coach, but it was he was good for this game, he really was.
Sorry, go on, Franny.
I was going to say another one of your teammates on that Bracknell team was Mark Bernard, who's now with Chicago.
I still talk to him probably once every 2 weeks. So
yeah, what a career he's made for himself. Did you see that in him when he was a teammate? I know we sort of all joke about when he was in Basingstoke and he'd be sort of doing the Zamboni before games, he'd be coaching and then he'd be the goalie. Obviously a grafter, but did you see something in him that you knew he was going to go far in the game?
The one thing I would say is Bernie was great, like back before, like it sounds ridiculous, back before the internet was big and people had mobile phones. Bernie was great at networking. Like he stayed in touch with everyone in hockey. Like we'd be on a road trip and like we'd be at a hotel and I'd be like, oh, who you getting on the payphone with? And he'd be like, oh, I'm calling John Brophy, my old coach from Hampton Roads, just to catch up. And I'd be like, God, that's weird, but like it's so smart, because like when he gets a job, what does he call? He calls like one of his buddies that he played with 5 years ago. The guy hires him. Then that guy immediately like either moves to a different organization. His first job, he went from being like assistant general manager. The president left. He's the president. Like 2 weeks later, he's the president of Norfolk, right? In the American Hockey League, like out of nowhere. And he's done a tremendous job, and he is a grafter. And that's what I love about Bernie. But like people don't know this, when we played in Bracknell, every Sunday night, Bernie drove to London and worked an overnight security guard for like 10 hours.
Really?
Every Sunday night. And we used to think like, you cheap mother.
Yeah.
Because we're like, he's our starting goalie. He's probably our highest paid guy. But like Bernie was always like, you got to remember the Canadian dollar at the time was like 2.5, right? So he'd get, I don't know, maybe get 100 pounds cash. It was through some fan that gave him the job, right? And he'd be like, they need someone to do a Sunday night shift for their security. I literally have to go and sit there and basically fall asleep in a chair. And I wake up Monday. You guys have all been hungover because you're at a party at San Lee. I wake up at 8 in the morning. I probably slept 4 hours instead of 8 hours, but I don't really sleep after games. And I got 150 quid or whatever it is. That's Canadian. That's 350 or 375 at the time. He's like, that's my monthly mortgage payment at home, you know, for a Sunday night. And he did it for 2 years that I was there with him. So I just thought he was cheap. I didn't really know he was a grafter, you know. But yeah, I love Bernie. I still talk to him now, and I really respect him. He's won 3 Stanley Cups with Chicago, and whenever I talk hockey and I need some advice, he's one of the first guys I call. So
sorry, Todd, I just wanted to ask you quickly, because we're deliberately steering away from asking you about Cardiff Devils as GM. Do you remember experiencing Cardiff as a player, coming into the old Wales National Ice Rink, and guys like Matulik and William and Mikey Ware? And what were your memories of Cardiff as a player?
I think if I saw Ivan Matulik right now, I might seriously still do this. We used to start those games when I was in Bracknell. Me and McCosh, Shane McCosh was my D partner. We like Wiss or whoever would come in and give you the starting lineup, and we'd be like, okay, let's just get through these first 2 minutes. Like that's like it wasn't even like let's try to score in the first 2 minutes. Like let's just weather the storm. Let's try to get these through. You know, let Matulik and McWilliam run around and run us for 2 minutes, and then maybe they'll calm down a little and we can get playing this game. Because like you'd line up and you'd be starting, you'd see like Matulik and you'd be like, this guy, like he was one of the first guys where I was like, what is he doing over here? Like, go to the NHL, leave us alone. You know? Matulik was so good and so big and so strong, and like he had that like the next guy that I saw with like that barrel, that like, you know, Blair Riley, when you see him like in the locker, just like, you know, like he's huge, he's just big all over. Like Matulik was like that. I was just like, my God, like go home, get out of here, get back to Edmonton or wherever you were playing in the NHL. Just leave this league to us.
Hands like shovels as well.
Yeah,
I used to dread the handshakes.
Oh yeah, and Mike Ware, same thing. Like nightmares about that guy. I have it was actually when I was in Belfast, but Shane, everyone thought me and Shane Johnson, because I wore 44, Shane wore 4, we were D partners. We kind of looked the same on the ice, and Johnny stood up Mike Ware one time, like unbelievable. Like Mike Ware was coming across. This is in Belfast, so it's 7,000. It's our first year in Belfast. He stands up Mike Ware. I think he might have been in London then. I can't even remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mike Ware. So Johnny stands him up, like just like hammers it, and Mike Ware's just like teetering like this, right? And he falls like and like 7,000. It's like a tower fell down. 7,000 people are like, oh! And Johnny hits him, turns, and changes with me, right? So Ware looks up, probably catches Johnny out of the corner of his eye, sees this like a 4 or something, and then he probably shakes it off, and he sees me in the corner with my basically standing like this with my head in the corner. And I got absolutely run from behind. Like he'd be 20-game suspension right now. He probably doesn't remember. It was probably one of 1,000 of those hits in that day. But, that's the first time I had a concussion. I remember just KO'd, out. Like just don't even remember what happened. And being back on the bench, couldn't remember my name. Played the rest of the game though. solid protocol right there. Yeah. Solid concussion protocol. And if I tell the story in like 5 minutes, you'll know that there was no lasting effects.
There was no.
So we reminded a little bit to you decide to go to Belfast. Was it that trust in Wiss that made it easier for you? Because it's a startup organization. Hockey at that level hasn't really been tested in that area. So I guess it is a little bit of a gamble. What were your thoughts and feelings moving to Belfast for the first time?
So when Wiss went to
sorry,
Belfast,
Todd, can you tell the story as well about how you didn't answer the phone for 6 weeks?
Wiss or me?
You told me you didn't answer the phone for 6 weeks.
Yeah, no, I'm getting to that. Yeah. So basically what happened was when Wiss went to Belfast, I don't know if it was a league rule or an agreement with Bracknell. Basically, I think he could take 2 people with him, right? So he took Rob Stewart as his assistant coach, and he took Kevin Reel, who was our best player in Bracknell, right? Kevin Reel. And that was it. The rest of us weren't going. And I saw Stewie was still in Bracknell. Like, he was back and forth between Bracknell and Belfast. And Wiss had told us, like, Belfast is unbelievable. I've been over there and checked it out. It's going to be unbelievable. The arena is going to be insane. And Stewie told us about how he can't sign any of us. Like, he's just not allowed to sign any of us. And Stewie's like, but Bracknell only has, it was like another 4 or 5 weeks before they have to make you an offer. And then if you call Wiss, well, technically he didn't call you. So I was in Calgary and I had a rule at my house. I was like, I am never here. No matter who calls, I'm never here. So my parents would get a call, and the poor guy, like, I think it was Ennio Sacalato.
Yeah.
And he was calling, and he was calling me and probably a few other players. And I had called Colin Ward, like my best buddy, and said, like, don't answer the phone for like 5 weeks. I'll call you when you can call Wiss. And so, so I waited it out, and then I called Wiss and I was like, hey, Dave, I haven't heard from Bracknell, so I'm just going to throw my name in the pot here. Sign me like an hour later. Then Wardy called. Hey, Dave, how's it going? I just haven't heard from Bracknell, so I thought I'd throw my name in and so we all did that, and that's how we all got there. So Paxton, me, Johnny, like the core of the team, the core of like the heart and soul of that team from Bracknell, bar Brian Greer, we all left and went to Belfast. And man, did they boo us when we went back to Bracknell. And you know what? I gotta say, you look back and you think, I used to always think like Bracknell treated us bad, and I was right. They treated us bad. And I remember when I first went back to Bracknell, I did an article in the paper because there was no real internet coverage then. And I said, like, because that story about Stanley, it never got better. I never drove a better car or lived in a different house. I lived in that terrible haunted house for 3 years. I just loved it. I did it good. Right? But like, it's one of those things where I remember saying when I first ran teams, I will never treat players like they treated me in Bracknell. Never, ever, ever. And I got treated like shit. And we all did. And I said in the article, they're like, why did you all leave and go to Belfast? And I was like, you can only live in a haunted house and drive the worst car in the league for so many years. And that was literally the quote. People booed us. And I mean, the people of Bracknell were great. If I look back on fun years, like fun years of like, Franny, you have those years, like half your team single, you're going to London every Monday on pub crawls. It was so fun. Like it wasn't, and that's why it's shocking we won, because like we played hard, but we had fun, like literally every Monday we went with the whole team went to London on an all-day pub crawl. And then we were always on the ice on Tuesday and sweating it out. And by the time we were on the weekend, we were fine, but like we really basically drank Sunday and Monday nights, and that was it. But yeah, like it was a fun year. And so I look back on Bracknell very fondly, but yeah, they couldn't have treated us worse. They didn't give a shit about us at all. Like you are just another employee there. And I have a tough time arguing with anyone that would try to tell me different, John Nike has passed on now, but still doesn't mean that he treated us well. He wasn't good to us. I'll give you an example. When we won the league, he brought in a bunch of empty champagne bottles, expensive champagne bottles, and we had to take a picture like he bought us expensive champagne. We have this picture of all of us holding champagne bottles, and they were all empty, and we never got any champagne.
Wow.
So that's the kind of stuff. And yeah, we drove terrible cars and lived in terrible houses. So I'm not surprised that the Bracknell Bees were not in the league very long. So
Todd, when you went to Belfast, sorry, and I promise this is the last one, and you might not want to answer this, but away from hockey, I'm always interested in the human side. Did you kind of, because you're a clued up guy, did you realize it was a bigger project? Did you realize it was, I guess, pretty political over there, or was it just hockey for you?
I knew it was political because my grandmother was from Northern Ireland. So so I have an Irish passport actually. So my parents freaked out when I signed in Belfast. Like my mom was crying. I think I don't know if maybe I'm exaggerating that they freaked out, but they certainly were a little concerned because it was kind of the old country that no one really talked about. And I mean, growing up in Canada, you learn a lot about the Troubles and you learn all about Northern Ireland and it's, I mean, until you live over there, you cannot fully like. One thing I noticed about Northern Ireland is once you get out of there, like you're engrossed in it. You have to learn about it. It's such an important part of their culture. And I read so many books about the Troubles and about, because it's very interesting and you can experience it right then and there. You want to know the pub that something happened in, you can go to that pub. You can drive down the peace line. You know these counties where things were happening. Like it's really interesting, but like it's recent. And yeah, my parents were worried. The funny thing is like the guys that I played summer hockey with like loads of guys that played pro all over Europe. And my last day that I went, they're all like, and I mean, these are guys, there's guys that played in the NHL, there's guys that played in the American League, Swiss League, all over the world. And they're all kind of giggling. We're playing like shinny pickup hockey. We do it 3 days a week for all of July kind of thing. And they're all like, hey, we got you something. And I'm like, what? And like, some of the guys, you think they don't even know my name. They're like, no, we got you something. And there was this big present wrapped up. And what it was is, so I open it up and it's a hockey stick with a round mirror duct taped on it. And they're like, this is to check for bombs.
Look into your car.
And they thought it was I thought it was, to this day, I think it's one of them. But yeah, it's, you hear like, oh, you're never going to see that stuff. You're never going to experience it. My first day. So the first year we were there, they kept us, they didn't want us living in Belfast. We lived in a town about 30 minutes outside of Belfast called Bangor. And we went down to Bangor, like on the pier, like just to a local bar. And we went to like, like it was like me, Shane Johnson, Corey Carlander, Colin Ward, a few of us, Packer maybe. And went to the bar, went home that night. The next day in the papers, the bouncers at that bar got in their car and there was a car bomb in it. And we were like, holy shit, this stuff is real. And like the first time you see the police cars in Northern Ireland, when we first got there, they look like tanks. Like they're built like tanks. And to, like thinking about it, this is 2000, right? Like that's 21 years ago. I was in Belfast and like they just, I mean, I would say, like as far as a place that's progressed over the last few years, like Belfast to me is one of the most best kept secrets in Europe. As far as like if I had the choice of saying you want a great experience for Irish music, culture, pub crawl, skip Dublin, go to Belfast. It's 10 times better. I could work for the tourist board for Northern Ireland. I loved everything about it. I loved living there. I loved the setup I had there. I loved the Giants. I loved the arena. My wife loved it there. Our kid was born there. Like I would move back there in a heartbeat. I loved it. Loved every bit about it, and couldn't recommend it enough. And that's why the pub crawl, the double header we have in Belfast every year is so fun. We take all our sponsors there, and I feel like I'm back in my town. And like we had a lot of success there as a player and as a general manager. And honestly, I would have never left. I was very content there. It's a great place to live. And I think people don't realize how good it is. The people there don't realize how good it is, because it's kind of like, they're always kind of like, oh, no one really thinks about them. They think of, in the UK, it's England first, then Scotland, then Wales, then somewhere down the line, it's Northern Ireland. And it's a great place to live. It really is.
Todd, how much do you think, you talked about, being 20 years and how progressive it's been, how much do you think the Giants did have an effect? The tagline has always been, in the land of the Giants, everyone is equal. Do you think it's had a real positive effect on that area?
I think, by the way, John, I do like living in Cardiff more. I know I just pumped the tires. just in case players are watching this, I do like Belfast more, or I do like.
Use the hubs, make a note.
I generally do, and we could talk about that why, but there's no point. But as far as an impact on the community, I don't think there's a team in the world that could have more of an impact on the community than Belfast Giants. And I know I'm not with them now, but you got to give them props for what they did for that. For like, I mean, they, and I'm not saying they, they mended the peace in Northern Ireland or anything, but like, man, that was something. It was so like, it sounds cheesy, but you felt like you were a part of something bigger. You really did. Like, I mean, they did a good job of kind of like educating you on it. And the players we had, I think Wiss knew to recruit as much as he had to recruit good players, he had to recruit good talkers too, because we talked and we networked and we went to events and we went to an event. Me and Colin Ward went to the Belfast Sports Awards in like 2001 and maybe 2000. Well, the first year might have been in January 2001. And we went to, and this is my knowledge of sport, John, you'll hate me for this. And apologies to everyone in Northern Ireland if you're watching this. We went to an event and there's all these celebrities, all these sports celebrities there. And we see this lady walk by and me and Colin are like, oh my God, did you see that lady? Did you see how gorgeous she was? And one of the guys at our table goes, keep it quiet, man. That's Alex Best. And I'm like, who's Alex Best? Like, that's George Best's wife. And I'm like, who's George Best? To a table of Northern Ireland sports reporters, I say, who's George Best? To this day, it makes me cringe thinking that those people.
He's only got an airport named after him.
Yeah, I got an education in why George Best is the greatest player in the world. And God forbid, like, what a dumb thing to say. But like, we were signing autographs that night. And at that event with guys like George Best and Tony McCoy, and people were coming up to the Belfast Giants to get their autographs because they were just so shocked that there was hockey. And like our first game, there was 7,000 people there watching our warm up because they had no clue what was going on. And there were events, like I remember being in an event where we got to the bar after. Harp was our sponsor, Harp Lager, and we got to the bar after the game, and there were so many students at the bar that the bouncers are like, look, we can lift you up on the crowd, but you're gonna have to crowd surf to the stage. And I'm 24, 25. I'm like, happy, absolutely. Like, lift me up, buddy. So there we are. And me and Jeff Hode are literally crowd surfing over students, right? And he just looks over and he goes, we're rock stars, man. We're rock stars.
Wasn't there 7-foot cutouts of Paxton outside every pub in Belfast, pretty much? I remember those.
Every pub in Belfast had a cutout of Paxton Schulte. They wanted us to call him the Fridge, Paxton the Fridge Schulte. And we were everywhere. We had these gold cards from Harp where we could go to any pub and get a free pint, literally like a credit card. Wiss had a keg and glasses in his garage, and the people in his neighborhood, they did some jobs that people don't tell you they did in Northern Ireland for security reasons. They would be in his garage drinking beer after their shift was done. And yeah, we would pop by the garage and have a couple pints of Harp with Wiss sometimes. It was like he was running a bar. It was hilarious. And they'd back up the Harp truck once a month, and they'd back up and give you 4 cases of Harp. And it was like that for 3 years, and then reality set in and realized that they'd spent all their money and lost all their money, and that's that was kind of the demise of the Super League. But
Todd, going back to the TV interviews and stuff, what was the interview you told me about one time with the song lyrics?
Oh, we met Lionel Richie, and Lionel Richie was on the show with us, so me and Colin Ward were in the green room, and we were like, let's try to get as many Lionel Richie songs into the conversation as possible. And Wardy's like, okay, what can we get? Like Dancing on the Ceiling, like Once, Twice, 3 Times Lady. And I was like, I got it. So we met him, and I just went, hello, and he walked out. It was funny. We used to get paid for TV appearances then. Like we'd go on like these talk shows, and then they'd be like, can you just send us your information, and we get like £200 to be on TV. So like you do like a BBC interview and you get £200. those days are long gone. That doesn't happen anymore. But yeah, it was crazy.
I'd say the first year when we used to go out to do games, fair play to the organisation. They used to pick us up from the airport. They put us out on the black. Remember the black cab tours and stuff like that. So even as like an official going over, you still get all the history. You'd get the gold card to go and use in the pubs after games and stuff. We were royally looked after over there. It was amazing. It was a great place to go.
And that's why us as the visiting team never got any calls.
Yeah.
100%. That's why you always get them at home, Franny.
But also, teams loved coming to Belfast because it was like it was the only road trip where you stayed in a hotel pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
And for us, like we stayed in hotels every weekend. It got ridiculous. Like our travel was terrible, but it totally.
I remember when we played. You used to play a lot of midweek games, didn't you? Because maybe the arena was booked on the weekend, so it'd be a midweek game, and obviously you're not flying back till the next day. So that meant an automatic team night out, no game the next day. And I remember when Wiss was our coach, actually in Cardiff, and it was me, Jonna, Phil Hill, and he said, I think we may have been playing on the Thursday, and then we got a game on a Saturday. So he doesn't want to get us too boozed up. So he's like, whatever you do, do not get in at 3 a.m. So we're out in Belfast and we're having the time of our lives. And then we find another bar. The bars normally shut quite early, but then we find like maybe it was Thompson's garage or somewhere else. And we go in there and it goes to 2 o'clock. And then it's coming near 3 o'clock. And we're like, boys, we said, do not come in at 3 o'clock. So we're going to have to stay out a bit longer. So so that was us. We stayed out the whole night then and then got straight on the plane, I think. Actually, we had practice the next day. And Wiss called off practice after about 5 minutes because it was a write-off. And we said, Wiss, you just said, don't come in at 3 o'clock. And we didn't. We're following your instructions.
But, you know, on the hockey side of things, it was, you know, like two of the best teams I ever played on. The second and third year in Belfast. The year we won the league, I think we clinched by January, and then we clinched in Bracknell actually, and then the third year when we won the playoffs, that was like Stevie Thornton came from London that year. That's probably why I'm such good buddies with Thorts, but that was a hell of a team too. A lot of fun. Like that, the Super League was. I mean, it was incredible hockey. It really was. We went to Europe that year. We beat Davos in the what was it called back then? The Europa or the
Europa Continental Cup.
Continental Cup.
Yeah. When I was looking back at the rosters earlier, Todd, one thing that like blew my mind on that is I forgot how small the rosters were on those Super League teams. Like the year that you were the league champions in 01-02, you had 5D, 10 forwards, not just like to end the season, but that was the whole year. Not one player up, not one player, you know.
And it's crazy because like.
And that's it.
It's crazy to think of that because like we played 5. I think my whole professional career we played 5D.
Yeah.
Like 5 defense, and if there was a 6th defenseman, I'd be like, this sucks. It's like we have no ice time. And now, and maybe it's fast. It is faster now, but like. I don't know. I was always a guy that loved being on the ice. So, and yeah, you dress 10 forwards, like 9 or 10 forwards. And, and if there were injuries, I actually don't even, I assume we just like, I think we just went down to 4 defense and then played 9 forwards. Like we always had 9 forwards. Like the next year Sheffield had gone 4 lines. And so we actually had 11 forwards and 60, or no, we had 10 forwards and 60. And then we changed it to 11 forwards and 5D because we needed to kind of go 4 lines and especially in the European games. But yeah, it's crazy to think of that. You know, you look at some of the team pictures and you're like, there's 4 guys missing, you know? But yeah, it's one of the things like I'm very, very proud to have been a Belfast Giant, like to play for the Belfast Giants. I know they're our big rival now and probably because, you know, I left there to come here and stuff, but you know, I was very proud to play for him, and I was very proud to get to run the team. It was a lot of fun.
I was going to say, Todd, the fact that you were there for year one, I always think there's something special if you're there at year one, no matter what it was. I mean, in my job away from hockey, I came into my company when they just started the department, and that was special because it was something that had never been done before, and that must have been really special being part of the very first year Belfast Giants.
Yeah, it is, and it's cool to talk back about, like, to remember back. Like, we always, like, I see Mark Cavlin. I saw him 2 years ago. Hadn't seen him in probably 15 years, and we go right back. Like, you just have so many good memories of guys you play with. But that first year in Belfast, like, it was you really like, it was insane, the stuff. Like, I don't know if any team's ever done more promotions than that. Like, we did so many promotions. We did a bus tour. We got booed by the people of Belfast. We did a bus tour. We hadn't even won a game yet, and they had us doing a bus tour before the first home game, which was in December. We'd lost like 12 games on the road. People were booing us, like, "Go home, you washed up Canadians." And we're like, "Oh, they kind of got us tagged there." It's
Ranny, enough of the nice stuff, though. Are you going to finally call Todd out about costing us the league title and the Tyler Michelle incident?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Since we're moving on to him as a GM, so you take over as a GM 2007, midway through the season?
I don't count that one because I was still playing. So
yeah, still play. And then, but that must have been before we are going to get into the Tyler Michelle bit. But
yeah, no. So my first year's GM, they literally called me. So real quick one, because John, I don't want to take up too much time because I know you're sick of this, but the way I got into being the general manager is after the Super League folded, I came back and I needed a job besides hockey because I was like, I cannot come back for like half the money. And so Rob Stewart and his wife helped me get a job. I worked as a printing salesman while I played hockey. So I literally was a sales manager for a printing company in Belfast while I played hockey. And I did this for like 2.5 years. And going into the third year, the owner, who I knew, but I didn't really know that well, Jim Gillespie, called me up and asked me to come to his house. And I was freaking out because I was like, he's pissed, man. He knows I've got a job. My printing job makes far more money than my hockey job. I'd started a magazine on the side because they didn't have a program in Belfast. So I was like, I work in a printing company. I'll just start a program. And so I bought the rights to sell a program off of the Belfast Giants. And I paid them 10 grand for that. And then I sold all the sponsorship in the magazine. And then I also started selling sponsorship because I kind of knew everyone in town from the printing job. So I started selling. And so then the local radio station asked me if I wanted to do a radio show. So I was like, sure. And I just thought it was for fun. And they're like, they're like, how much do you charge? And I'm like, oh, and I kind of threw out a number and they're like, okay. So then I had a radio job, a printing job, a magazine publishing business, and I was playing hockey. So I thought, they are pissed. They figured it out that I'm making far too much, like more than I'm playing hockey. So I generally thought he was like calling to fire me because he was like, you can't do that. And yeah, he basically said, like, I like that you're doing all this stuff, and do you want to run the team? And I was like, well, no, I'm still playing. It's only October. And he's like, well, we can find another defenseman. And I was like, well, why don't I play out the year? Could I have a testimonial? It's my 10 years pro. Can I have a testimonial? And the testimonials where I tried all the crazy shit that we did in Belfast for the first time, giving away pizzas, ridiculous stuff in the crowds, because up to that point we hadn't really done any of that stuff. So yeah, so that's how.
And was that the Fleury year then?
No, Fleury was the next year. Oh no, Fleury was that year. Yeah, Fleury was the year before. Fleury was the year before.
Yeah. 05-06.
I was only working printing salesman then. I wasn't a general manager. So Fleury thought it was the funniest thing because, like, I wore a suit to practice because I had to go on sales. And he was like, "Why are you wearing a suit?" And I'm like, "I actually sell printing. Like, I'm a salesman." And he goes, he's like, "Oh my God, the defenseman I passed on the power play sells printing for a living." And then he sees Graham Walton working at the rink, right? And he's like, "What have I come into here?" So, yeah.
How weird was it on that first day when Theo Fleury walks through the door and he's in your locker room and he's now your teammate and you're still the 14-year-old kid watching him win the Stanley Cup in Calgary?
I called him Mr. Fleury first day. It's like, "Hey, man, you're literally my favorite." I could not even sleep the night before. And I was so, and the guys knew because, like, they knew he was my favorite player, and I was just like, I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know if I can even play on this team with this guy. Like, I love this guy so much, and like, when he was going through all the troubles with drink and drugs, I was Team Fleury the whole way. I'm like, it's not his fault. He's in New York. It's there. Why would they trade him to New York? Or why would they sign in New York? And I love that guy. My parents love that guy. Everyone. And And I just went out, I was like, hey, Mr. Fleury. And he's like, you're going to have to call me Theo or something. You can't call me Mr. Fleury. And so first couple road trips, like he came to us. I'll never, Jason Ruff, who's a really funny guy. He was still on the team then. He left halfway through the year, but after the first or second practice, Theo asked for a meeting with the captains. And I think it was like me, Shane Johnson, Jason Ruff, and George Water or something like that, right? And he pulled us into the little side room in Belfast. He's like, hey, I want to talk to you guys. And he's like, listen, can my fiance is going to, he didn't say can, he said, my fiance is going to have to come on the road with us because, you know, I'm on the, like, I'm just recovering and I need her there because I need a support network around me so I don't fall off the wagon. And we're like, yeah, no problem. Like, whatever we can do, whatever, you know, we'll be there for you. Whatever, if you need her there, she can come on every. So she came on every road trip. But here's the kicker. He goes, you know, I've been sober for nearly a week now. And we're like, okay. And then he walks out, and Jason Ruff goes, a week? Like, what are you talking about? They told us it had been like 6 months. The owners told us it had been like 6 months. A week. And so Ruff's like, so today's Friday. So basically he had a bender on Saturday night, got on the plane Sunday, goes up here Monday. So he just hasn't drank in this week, really, right? Like a week. And yeah, and in fairness to Fleury, great teammate, didn't get in any, didn't touch drink, didn't do, like he's the only human. I told him when he left, I was like, you know what, you're gonna go down in history as the only human to move to Ireland to sober up. And it's true. And great guy, great teammate. You know, bought us all drinks when we went on the road, like came to the bar, didn't drink, just hung out with the team, told stories. And we were all nervous about asking him about stories, right? And because, like, if I have a story about Neil Francis and Andrew Lord, he's got a story about Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier. His stories are way better than my stories. And he yeah, like it was the first road trip or something. We were all kind of like talking, like, fuck, we should ask him. So finally we were like, hey, Theo, any chance of some stories? And he's just like, I'll tell you them all. You did. And he would hold court after games. He would be drinking a Fanta orange, and we'd all have pints, which was actually nice because, like, it's probably tough to see us all drinking, right? But like, he would just drink Fanta, and he would hold court and tell us stories. And we all agreed, sideline from Theo, we all said, like, one of us always stays back with him. Like, one of us, if we all go to the bar, we rotate. One of us always stay back with him and his fiance until they go to bed, because he's a great teammate. One of us always, so on the road, you know, maybe we're in Edinburgh and everyone goes out and I'm staying with them. And maybe the next week Curtis Huppy's staying with him. And then the next week Jason Ruff. But we kind of rotated just to make sure that he was okay. And he was great teammate, great guy.
What are your memories of that crazy game against Cardiff where it's a sellout rink and Theo and Ed Courtney maybe lost their head a little bit with Nigel Boniface, and you didn't clinch the league in front of the sellout crowd, and maybe the bill for sticks went up a little bit towards the end of the year?
So maybe the producer can edit in a clip of Ed Courtney throwing the sticks here.
I've got it.
Yeah, so the problem we had with that is we were ahead of ourselves. We were already planning the celebration, because even if we lost it, like, it was inevitable. We could have lost every game. We had to get 1 point or something, but we were sure we were going to win that. Midweek sellout, like, you don't sell out a midweek game back then, right?
We took an extra seats as well at the far.
I can remember, I think so, and it just went wrong right from the start. Like, Cardiff scored 2 right away. I got thrown. People forget Fleury got thrown out. Ed Courtney got thrown out. I got thrown out too, because I was I was the third to get thrown out. I lost my mind on Boniface. Lost my mind on him, and I called him everything in the book. Told him exactly what I thought. To this day, I think Nigel Boniface was the worst ref we ever had. Nigel Boniface. Side note from this, I don't think it was after that game. One time, it might have been a few years before that, Boniface had a typical bad game in Belfast, and he showed up at the bar that we all, like, our team bar, and he was at the bar. I could see him, like, through the crowd. I could see his face, and he kind of gives me the, like, that, you know, and I'm like, and I go and talk to the doorman. I'm like, can you please go get that guy in a suit and escort him and his friends out of the bar? And the bouncers literally went and grabbed him and the other 2 officials and just took them straight out of the bar.
I'm so hoping the other official was Hubs.
Yeah.
I think it might have been Hicksy. Actually.
Yeah, it might have been Hicksy. Hicksy and Bonnie did lots of games back then, but let's just say there was when the allocations came out and you saw who your referee was, then some you look forward to, some you didn't look forward to because you'd end up having a busier night than you should have. Nigel might have been on that second list.
But yeah, so like we screwed up and it was embarrassing, and Ed lost his rag and threw sticks and gloves and helmets on the ice, and Fleury lost his mind, and then they got suspended for like 5 games each or something, and like we couldn't win then. Like I hate to say, we like think of the lineup. They were our top 2 scorers, top 2 in the league, our best 2 players, our coach, and I remember it was so embarrassing. Like we would be sitting there and be like me and George Awada trying to convince the team that we can beat, and like we're going into Basingstoke and we need like a tie in Basingstoke, and Ed and them are up in the corner watching us, and like you're like you could just see them like shaking their head at how bad we were without them. It was just like, and I think we lost like 4 in a row, and then the last place Edinburgh Capitals beat like Newcastle in Newcastle or something like that. So we won the league because we had 6 chances or 4 chances to win it. We lost them all. We won the league on a Sunday night because the Edinburgh Capitals beat the Newcastle Vipers, and we got a point, or they could mathematically not catch us anymore. And back then, like there was like a IH update website, like a really crappy website, and you were just all refreshing. And it was it was unreliable because some nights like you'd have the score like 2-1 for Edinburgh, then it was 2-1 Newcastle, then it was 2-1. Like they kept getting wrong, and so then it stopped, and then it went no more updates, and we're all calling each other like, did they win or did they lose? I don't know. I last time I saw it was 2-1 Edinburgh. Last time I saw it was 2-1 Newcastle. We're trying to figure out, and then finally someone called the rink manager in Edinburgh, wherever the game was, and like, what was the final score? And they told us. And then we had to ring. We didn't have cell phone. Like, we had to ring around, and we called everyone. We're like, meet at the bar in half an hour. We just won the league. and Fleury came and bought everyone drinks, and we celebrated. And he didn't touch it. He just sat there, and him and his girlfriend sat there and partied with us. And it's funny because like imagine you've won the league and you're waiting for your 15 or 16 teammates to come through the door. And you're just, every time someone comes through the door, you're re-celebrating, right? Like, because this guy comes through the door, and it was a lot of fun, but like a terrible way to win it. Terrible way to win it.
I think we were just playing to get a night out. If we won in Belfast, we were having a good night out in the midweek, and that's what we were playing for.
Did it mean something to you, Todd, when Fleury went back? And I know it was symbolic, but the fact he got to finish as a Flame, was that a nice touch?
Yeah. So and I'll never forget, he did a great interview because he went back. I mean, it was 3 or 4 years later that he was actually back with the Flames. It wasn't the next year; it was maybe 2 years later. And they took him, and he got in sick shape. He worked out all summer, and he was playing exhibition games. And his last game, they went into a shootout, and it was sold out in the Saddle Dome, and Fleury got to be the last shooter, and he scored, and he won the game. And they described it like it was Game 7 Stanley Cup playoffs, but it was an exhibition game. It was sold out because Fleury is that popular. Like, he was so popular in Calgary. And after the game, I remember watching the press conference, and I mean, this is preseason. No one even cares about preseason. And they interviewed, and they said, is it tough? Because like I think after the game they said like Theoren Fleury is going to be cut from the squad, and they said, Theoren, is it tough that you didn't make it back, like this long road and everything you did and fought alcoholism, is it tough that you didn't make it back? And his response was great. He was just like, what are you talking about? I just scored the overtime winner, or I just scored the shot winner. And I just thought, that's the best. Like, if you know him, that's him, right? Like, what are you talking about? I just scored. I made it back. I just did all that work. What do you mean? You did all that work for nothing? No. What do you mean? I just scored. I just scored the shootout winner, and that was it. That was him done. And I think it was great. I think I thought maybe someone would have taken him for PR purely because he's that good on the power play, and I thought the Flames might have done it, but because they weren't that good that year. But I think it might have been a huge distraction too, because he was so, it was probably like Michael Jordan going back to the Washington Wizards years after Chicago, you know.
So Todd, after all, you're ending your time on the ice in Belfast. Was there any second thoughts? I mean, you were pretty young in sort of British hockey terms to end that career there. I know. I think we joked a few years ago when Ashley Tate was still playing that he was older than you, and you were up in the stands, and you had been for some time. So, what was, were you comfortable not playing anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys that, like, my friends at home would always say this, like, I love hockey. Like, it is my favorite thing in the world. Like, if I had a chance to, and this is what kept me on the straight and narrow pretty much my whole life. I was never a guy that thought, like, I'm going to skip out on curfew to, I want to skip out on curfew because I want to go to the party on the weekend. And my coach said, be home at midnight, and I'm coming home at 2 a.m. on a Friday night, and we have a game Saturday. Like, I was so straight and narrow because hockey, and if people said, like, what's your dream day? I'd be like, wake up, call my buddies, go play pickup hockey, go home, maybe watch a game. Like, I love it. And I love playing it. It was my favorite thing to do. But I also, my dream for when I finished hockey was to get into management. I never wanted to coach. Like, I know a lot of people want to coach, but I always wanted to kind of run the business side of things and be involved in the hockey. But I had a plan, and my plan was, like, I was quite open about it. Like, I was planning to go to Sheffield the next year and do my MBA. I talked to Matsos about it. I was like, I have to get my MBA. Like, I need to get an MBA because that's the only way I'm going to get into management. And at the time, Belfast didn't have this. And so I talked to him. I was like, I'll finish this year here. Then I'll come to Sheffield for 1 or 2 years, finish, get my MBA, finish in Sheffield. Then I'll get into management somehow. And then I got the call to run the team in Belfast. And like, that was our plan, mine and my wife's plan. And she said, what about going to Sheffield? And I'm like, well, I'm just skipping over the next 2 years. Or maybe it was 5 years. Maybe I would have played another 5 years. I don't know, because I was always under the impression to play till my legs fell off, because I loved it. But when the job comes up, you can't really say no, and to get to run the Belfast Giants, the team that you played for from day one, like, it was a great scenario. And the only tough part was they didn't tell you how much they were losing until you signed the contract. And then you found out the real numbers. And I mean, but yeah, it was great. And I think I have no regrets about it. I think I got to play, and I won a league my last full season of playing, pretty much. And yeah, I think everyone always wishes they got to play a little longer because I loved it so much. But yeah, I mean, I was very lucky. I never had that adjustment period of trying to find something else. I guess I did when the Super League folded the summer before I came back to play in the Elite League for 3 months, and I had to get a job in Calgary, and I hated it. And then I came back and worked as a printing salesman. But even when I was a printing salesman in Belfast, I was still a hockey player that sold printing. I wasn't just a printing salesman. And but like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've had other job opportunities and to maybe move into the business side of hockey, just business side, but I love being involved in the playing side. And I'm not nearly as involved as Franny is, or ever as much. I got a lot of credit for recruitment that I never did. I was minorly involved in a few players, but I love talking hockey. I love being in on decisions. Me and Franny and Lordo could talk for hours about players. It never gets old. I love catching up with JD about old NHL days and stuff. It's just my passion. Like, I wake up every morning, I watch the NHL highlights. Every single morning of my life, I watch the NHL highlights, and I either tape games. Like, I'm obsessed with hockey. And so if you get to work in the job that you're obsessed with, and like, I never wanted to take a hockey job where they're like, you get known, you can sell the sponsorship, but you can't be involved in the hockey side. I'd be like, I don't want that, And that's the beauty of like working in sport. Like, I always say, like, like, if you could be an accountant, or you could be an accountant that works for a hockey team, or if you could be, you could be a business manager, or you could be a business manager that works for a hockey team. Every Saturday or Sunday night, you get to stand back and watch your team win or compete. Like, there's nothing like it. And so I get to be like, yeah, everyone bugs me because I'm on the microphone or I'm doing this or that. Kind of probably because I'm a bit of a control freak, but I'll show you the sign. The staff. Well, this is from Fee. I don't know if you can read it. That's my sign that Fee gave me off. It says, "I can be flexible as long as everything is exactly the way I want it. I'm totally flexible." So, people that work for me, they know how I am. But like I found my calling. Like I think anything that I was okay at, I think I was an average hockey player that got probably a little bit more time than he should have deserved because he liked it so much. But I think that I've done better things off the ice than I ever did on the ice. And I, like in Belfast, I felt so responsible for that organization when I was running it. I felt like I couldn't let this fail. And I mean, no one would ever know how close it was to failing in Belfast for a lot of years. And good people held it together. I had great staff there. And then I came here, and like, I always say, like, I love Belfast. Like coming to Cardiff, it got, people love hockey here. And like, that's what I love about this place is like, I am surrounded by people that like hockey as much as I do. And I didn't have that in Belfast, like I got to be honest with you. There's people that liked it, but like, they don't love it. And the fans like it. There's some that are very passionate. They were still, when I was there, they were still learning the game, a lot of them. Right. And there's some very knowledgeable people in hockey in Belfast now, but like, I think there's a lot of fans in Cardiff that have been watching hockey for 30 years, 35 years. That's a long time, and they're passionate and they love it. And, the fan base here is what attracted us to us. Like it's Franny did a good job selling it to us, but like, man, when you could watch and look at this organization, think they are in, if you think of ebbs and flows of a franchise, you couldn't have been lower. Absolutely. We got to take over this great storied franchise at the lowest point in its history, I would say. Wouldn't you say, Franny? Lowest point in history?
100%, yeah.
And that's a great time to take something over. I can't thank the guys, the owners that supported this, and I can't thank Franny enough for like making the call. And he wasn't calling to get me there. He was calling to get someone else out. But it just it was the right time for me and for Steve and them. And would you ever have thought, Franny? And I know we've never really talked about it that detailed. Like maybe over a few beers after we win something. But would you have ever imagined it would go this well?
No, it was when I was having those conversations, and it was as a friend. We'd met a number of times, probably through Samps, and and then got to know each other. And it was calling for a bit of advice. And when you said that time, well, I know someone that wants to buy a team, but thing is that they'll want me to run it. And I was like, oh my God, this is just perfect. This is, because I think at first maybe you thought that I wanted to take over a team or whatever, but it was literally, I knew that this club needed new ownership to get us back to where we belong. And when you uttered those words, I know someone. I was like, well, where are they? Go get them now, And yeah, but they're going to want me to come with them. And I'm like, and would you? And you're like, well, actually, I wouldn't mind trying something new. And it was, you came over a few times and you had a look around. And I mean, some things are written in the stars, aren't they? And the timing for the new arena, I think it was even a good thing that the arena wasn't ready, and we had those rustic years in the BBT, where you're sitting in a porta cabin out the back in the car park, and all the stories that we've told about ice tubs made out of big dustbins and all those things. I think it was that first year was special. We've spoken about it with guys like Wally, and bringing that great group of guys. And there's a theme that's running through the whole thing. Speaking to Vez about that first year that the Devils won the Super League, and the group of guys and the bond that they all had and how it translated on the ice. Same thing the first year that you guys took over, and we had that team with just special people. And we've been lucky enough to carry that on. But it's crazy how a couple of phone calls, and I always thought that I was maybe bugging you a bit when I kept on ringing and saying about those friends of yours that you said might be interested. Any news on them yet? But no, sure enough.
Probably because I hadn't told my wife we were moving to Cardiff yet.
Yeah, that's why you're being all evasive with me.
That's crazy talk, Franny. Let me
and I do remember that when I'm thinking that this is all done deal over the line, he's like, okay, I'm going to have to come over this weekend. And before I do, I got to tell my wife that we're coming across. And I was like, he hasn't told his wife yet. This is all going to go wrong. But no.
You know what's funny about that? I came across and I asked Paul Reagan, and I know some people might have beef with him, but I certainly don't really have any beef with him. And but I asked him, I was like, can you recommend a hotel that I can stay at, like a good hotel? I'm bringing my wife to kind of convince her to come across. And you know what he told me? The Future Inn. And I am not like I when my house wasn't ready, I had to stay at the Future Inn a lot of nights. I'm not ripping on the Future Inn, but you think like if you're trying to impress your wife to make a Cardiff, the Hilton, the Vale, like
Celtic Manor,
exactly, Future Inn, and yeah, we got to the Future Inn, and it couldn't have gone worse. We got there, we got upstairs. Someone had obviously like recently been using the bathroom and forgot to clean it, like the hotel did. Couldn't have gone worse. So we
horses in the room, and
yeah, Brian Greer had been living there for the last 6 months.
Yeah. We didn't even stay the night at the Future Inn. We moved to the Marriott, and then she went home a day early. So we were there for like 2 days, and then she was like, "I'm going home. This is terrible. I'm going home, taking my kid and going home." And so then I stayed here, and I'm like, well, this is a bit of a conundrum. So Sean is we're moving here in like 2 weeks. Yeah. So, but she loves it. You want to talk to someone that loves Cardiff? She liked Belfast. She loves Cardiff. Absolutely loves Cardiff. And yeah, so do I. My kids love it, and it's very different. But it's you know, like I'm grateful that Franny spent so much time with me. He showed me where, you know, he basically made me live in Penarth, which I love.
I was going to say, is it Penarth or Cardiff?
Didn't even give me an option. Didn't even give me an option to look around. Yeah, I loved it. And yeah, it's been crazy. And like you know, it's amazing that I talked for 2 hours about this, and I haven't even brought up, you know, one of my closest friends, and one of the best things about this place was well, we'll talk about the owners to finish, but Andrew Lord, like, what a move by Franny to talk about. Like, I had no idea who Andrew Lord was, and all I knew was I was recruiting him to Belfast. Remember, I almost had him signed.
Yeah.
Thank God he didn't sign in Belfast. But like, I mean, he's in Greenville. He won't. Well, I don't know if he'll have the time to listen to this, but I mean, it's been such a special ride, and to be, you know, for good people like that, guys, you know, like, well, everyone on this call I've become friends with, but like having Franny there, it's such a great story. Like, if you ever wish, like, do you remember the BBC called me like 3 summers ago or something, like, we want to do a fly on the wall documentary about your team, and they actually called me 3 different times. It wasn't BBC, it was like a production company. They called me before our 3rd season, right? Remember, that was the first league we won, and they said, you're now, you know, we came to your last game. It was I can't remember the name of the production company. We came to your last game, and we wanted to do a documentary starting all season. So we want to follow you to how you sign players, bringing the guys in that whole year. Do you imagine if they did that? That was the first year we won the league, and then we won the playoffs the next year. Like, could you imagine if they'd actually done it? And now they call every summer, and I'm like, you're missing out, man. We keep winning. You keep missing. He's serious, but yeah, Lordo's done a tremendous job, and then, you know, I know you're not asking questions about it, but like the whole ownership setup, I do not think, I think our fans get it. I don't think anyone can fathom the setup we have, and because you ask the league, ask the fans around the league, like, they just give me a blank checkbook and we lose hundreds of thousands every year, and that's not the case. But we have great ownership that I'm sure, you know, we haven't had to ask them for money, but if we had to ask them for money, they would put in the money. But that's not the point of it. We have great guys that own a hockey team for the right reasons. And it's never like, how can we scrimp and save? How can we save a bit of money on sticks or accommodate? It's, are the players happy? Is everyone taken care of? How's the setup? Is this the best place to play in the league? Does everyone want to play there? That's the kind of thing. Are we successful? What do we need? What do you need? More staff in the office? What could you do to get better? Like, these guys are good people, and they're great guys to work on, be doing this with. But it's so fun. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, think of some of the memories we have. Like, Franny, think of the pub crawls around Europe we've done. Some of the CHL trips. Like, those are memories that you will like. Think of Graz. Think of that experience in Graz with the team, with beating Remember that?
Calling Wally from the pub and basically coming up with Wally night after probably about 12 beers.
Flying Marty, Marty in because he was injured, and I was like, we got to fly Marty in just for the pregame talk to get the boys excited.
Yeah.
And he dressed up as the whatever it was, a Viking or whatever.
The Viking helmet and runs in the dressing room. But yeah.
Like I remember looking at Riley's face when we did that. Riley was laughing like a little kid, like he was killing himself, and he just thought it was the funniest thing that we flew in Marty to get the team pumped up. You know, not the best, not the best resources, but it was 150 quid that was totally worth it, I think. But
you're right. It is so cool having 4 owners that are as bigger fans of the Devils as people that are in the stands and who come and sit in the stands. They don't want to sit in the hospitality box. They want to sit in the stands with the fans. They want to go on the fan bus to the away trips. They have their hockey shirts on, new shirt every year, and they'll have it on from the moment they arrive in Cardiff to the moment they leave. And to get to find 4 people that are successful but are so ingrained into the club in such a relatively short space of time is just, it's unheard of, and it's just we're so lucky to have that. And again, like I say, when the stars aligned in the timing that maybe you were looking for something different in Belfast, and where the Devils were at the time at rock bottom and the arena on the horizon, and having 4 guys like that were willing to come in and underwrite it, to at least get us going. And it's one of those things that the club deserved it, and it's the stars aligned that when all that came through.
What's funny about that? I always think of Steve and Brian, because me and Lordo would be like, we talk hockey a lot with these guys. Like, these guys have big businesses that they're supposed to be running. We're bugging them for like a conference call about players and stuff. Mm-hmm. So this is like a year or 2 ago, and I was like to Brian and Steve, and I was like, listen, I don't want to bug you guys all the time. Like, are you guys okay with us like calling you to talk about the Devils all the time? And they're like, oh, this is nothing. Like, we talk between us, we talk like 3-4 times a day about that. Like Parker, Shosty, and Kelly, like they are constantly talking about the Devils. Like, it's like I remember talking to their staff, and their staff would be like, they'll bring up like the score in a board meeting. Like we're having a serious board meeting, and Steve will be like, oh, the Devils are up 3-2, and like it's unbelievable. Great, So you had a question.
Who's scared to have a proper Zorb football rematch though without cheating?
Oh my God. That still scares me. Like, who did Parker hit? Was it Alad?
Me.
Alad. Was it you?
Yeah.
Oh my God, we haven't seen Alad since. Is he alive?
They're still trying to get him out of the Zorb.
I remember when that finished, Franny said, "Is your knee okay?" And I said, I don't know what you mean. And he said, when you landed, I thought your ACL had I thought your leg
you buckled, yeah.
Remember,
I couldn't feel a thing.
Alad had like ice scrapes.
Yeah. Perhaps if you could find my goal though, because it was the best goal ever in the history of
football. We have a video of it, and it's Sharon, like Brian's wife, just going, Brian!
Yeah. Leave him alone! Leave him alone!
Didn't they have like proper ice shoes and the whole sort of thing? And like,
we totally cheated. They totally cheated.
Anyway, not that I'm better.
I remember taking the laptop in the changing room and seeing Alid coming flying over the net. You're like,
yeah, honestly, it's like one of those cartoons, like a bar fight cartoon, just limbs everywhere. It's ridiculous.
Paul Reagan never cheated at all football.
I remember trying to commentate as well, and I was just totally out of breath. And it was like something going on. I tried to talk into the mic. And I was like, I'm done. I'm gassed. Give me a water.
Yeah. We've been spoiled for fun, that's for sure, and it's always fun winning, and we've done a lot of that, and I'm sure there's organizations around the league that have their own special stories of how much fun it is there and stuff, and like I said, I came from one great organization to another great organization, so I've been very lucky for that. But yeah, it's been a hell of a ride these last until the COVID season. It's been very special, and I think we would have won that league in 2019-20 season if COVID hadn't canceled it. But yeah, we're moving forward, and I know like there's probably a lot of fans watching if they've stuck it out this long or listened this long, and I hope they have. But like, one thing I would say is 2021-22 season, I think it's a wake up call for sports internationally all across the world, and for us as well. You realize you've taken a step back and realized if you ever thought fans were important, and everyone does, times it by 1,000. Like you realize when there's no fans in the building how important fans are, and like the passion that I talk to you about, like my days of watching the Flames or meeting Scott Stevens or waiting for autographs after games. Like every kid in the stands feels that, and our players understand that. But like they get it, but they're going to get it a whole lot more. They are going to understand the value of fans, and our fan base is going to understand how much we appreciate them, because you always say, we wouldn't survive, we wouldn't be here without the fans, but like we wouldn't be here without the fans, and that's the truth. That's why we're not here this year. Like it's very evident, and I think I hope our fans come back in droves the way they have. I hope they remember that the passion that I have for hockey. I hope they bring it and remember why they love it, and I think we all do, and I think we're all kind of sitting and waiting for this to get over and get on with the world.
Yeah, and I think those listeners that have listened to the Jared Scaldi interview that we did, reading the feedback around that, it was really strong that you can see why we picked him, because he's a hockey first guy, very, very passionate about the game. One of the things he talked to us about in the interview, Todd, wasn't it, about he loves the grind of the longer seasons. That's, he talked in our podcast as well about when he went over to Europe, it wasn't as many games and all that, and he loves the grind. He loves being up till silly o'clock in the morning, cutting video ready for the next day. And I think it was always going to be so hard to replace Lordo, who was our first ever coach of the new era. I think it's in some ways it's handy that we've had this kind of reset year, that we're not going straight from Lordo into Scaldi. But it's like the start of the next era, I feel, and I'm really excited to get him over here and see what he can do, and keep our success moving along and take us to the next level.
I totally agree. And you know what? I just want to bring up one thing about the Scaldi interview. I really got chirped about the whole interview process. You guys are really all over me about the lengthy interview process. Like Scaldi feels comfortable enough to chirp me about it. You guys are chirping me about it. Franny was in up for Franny, who's involved in all of it. Like it was long, but it was like it was fun though. Like it was.
Todd, are we allowed to talk around the fourth round of the interview? What you did for that?
Sure. I don't even remember the fourth round. What did I do?
Who you got to interview, which wasn't Scaldi? Who did you get to talk to that wasn't Scaldi?
Buddy?
Yeah.
I got it in my phone. I got it as Scaldi's buddy. I still talk to him. Scaldi's Ronnie, Scaldi's buddy Ronnie. So I asked. I was actually funny that Scaldi didn't bring it up. So yeah, it was going into round 4, I think, and I asked Scaldi and like he was our guy, like honestly, probably from the first interview. Remember Franny, after we got we didn't really know him, and then we got the interview. We're like, wow, this guy's blow us away. But yeah, I asked him after like the 4th round. I was like, hey, yeah, everything's checking out. Your references are checking out. I'm just gonna need, and I asked him for like, I'm just gonna need like a couple guys that you worked with in this organization, maybe a reference from Cincinnati, and just your best friend. He's like, oh no, my best friend doesn't like work in hockey. I'm like, no, I'm totally fine with it. I need your best friend. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like you've got a best friend that doesn't play hockey that you still hang out with and have beers with? He's like, yeah. I'm like, that's who I want to talk to. And he laughed. Scaldi laughed. He's like, all right. You can talk to Ronnie. And so I called Ronnie, and we had a great chat. And I think Ronnie loved it. Like imagine, you don't get a lot of calls about like, if you're not in hockey, about like a reference on a hockey guy. And we talked, and I was like, what kind of guys? And I said to Scaldi after, I was like, you don't want Ronnie just giving you a reference. Like, you want Ronnie reading your eulogy. There isn't a guy alive. I want Ronnie to talk to you guys about me when I leave the Cardiff. Like, Ronnie gave the best description of Scaldi, and like he basically was like he made him out to be like literally the greatest human being alive, and I loved it. And then so I told Scaldi about it, and then Scaldi's like, you know, if I get this job, Ronnie's going to take all the credit for it. Like on Scaldi's birthday, I got a text from Ronnie, and first of all, I text Ronnie on his birthday, and then I got a text from Ronnie on Scaldi's birthday, and he sent me a picture of him, and he's got a Devils hoodie on. So he's coming over for sure.
Yeah, so we're having Ronnie night.
Yeah,
guys, I'm tapping out. I'm done, and we didn't even cover the Bruins coming over.
That's episode 2.
Yeah. Plenty more episodes.
Much like my interview process, this ran a lot longer than I. Hey, but you'll be glad. Trust me. You got to be thorough. I can see why some teams have revolving doors. If you don't do a lot of interviews, I mean, think of the first round, Franny. There were some guys that we thought would have been the guy, and we didn't even get him past the first interview. So, were
there a lot of names that, without naming names, Todd? How prominent are the Devils now? Albeit, okay, still a minor league hockey team, but were there a lot of credible names who wanted the job? Yeah, lots. There was. I mean, if we gave you the list and people recruited by CVs, there's some ones that you would have been shocked that maybe we didn't get it further than we did, but like
and there was some that we actually scratched off because we felt that they were too highly qualified for the job, because it was, it would have been too short a term thing for them, wouldn't it? And we wanted somebody for the long term, and but those are the kind of guys throwing their names in the hat.
But also got we're a different structure than a lot of teams, right? Like a lot of the guys, one of the parts of the interview process was cutting video and showing that they knew how to cut video. And there's some guys that and it's nothing against it, but there's coaches that coach at very high levels who have video coaches. And we explain, if you don't cut your own video, it's probably not the right job for you, because you don't have a video coach here. And yeah, like a great qualified coach might not fit into this, because maybe they, are you going to be able to cut video for till 2 a.m. after a Saturday game for a Sunday game, So there's all those factors, and that's why, that's why we got the guy. That's why we got the right guy.
So there we have it. Our conversation with Cardiff Devils Managing Director Todd Kelman, who was very gracious enough to spend a few hours talking about all of the things that shaped his hockey life. And boy, oh boy, can that guy tell a good story. I really, really want to get some sort of, I know he knows them, so maybe a location for the haunted house. Kirsty will fill in.
The silver carpet's still there.
Didn't even the best Don of Kebab fan in the whole league was in Bracknell, about 400 yards from Bracknell Ice Rink, and he didn't mention it once.
But I really, that's the first thing I want to do as soon as we get travel restrictions lifted is go on a drive down to Sangli Farm and check out
the horses.
Find the horses, see if the disco ball's still there, and go to the dancing room.
I'm pretty sure that those parties over the 3 years probably exercised any poltergeist that was lurking in that farm.
I think the safe to say, I think that's episode 1 of possibly 2, 3, or possibly 4 before we get to the. If we ever did the GM stuff with the Devils, I'm sure there's many stories and still to come from Todd.
Yeah, I've spent many a night where we've had beers after games or Belfast trips where you end up naturally in these kind of conversations and funny stories. So I thought I would have heard all his stories, but I think there was only a couple that I'd heard before, and there was a lot of new ones in there. So yeah, Todd has had an amazing career, and and lots of fun times along the way. And it was really, really good to get those stories out there tonight.
I'll have to watch the episode back, 'cause I must admit I stopped listening halfway through.
Now, John, come on now.
No, we're friends again.
Be friends.
We're friends. We got 2 bits of housekeeping, haven't we, before we wrap up the show tonight? So Franny has made the most exciting discovery of all time, but Hub, do you want to talk about a good cause that's going on, and a guy who we know from the hockey, Gareth Gardner? He's I'll forgive him. He's a Nottingham Forest fan, but he's genuinely a very good bloke, a very talented cricketer, and he was speaking to you, and we'd like to give reference to a little cause he's doing.
Yeah, Gareth is knows a Devils fan. So JD knows him. He's known to quite a few of the Devils fan base. Unfortunately, he lost a friend, Peter Edwards, who's another Devils fan. Passed away recently, been on dialysis for a long time. And Gareth wanted to do something in lockdown in his memory, so he set himself a task to walk around. It's run by a company called End to End, so it's like one of these challenges where over the course of the year you basically walk what would be the length of Wales, like coast to coast, start from Chepstow, following it around the coast and all the way back down again. He's done 320 miles since the 3rd of January this year, and he's trying to get ahead of the game before obviously lockdown finishes. On the walking path, he would be just past Milford Haven in West Wales. He's trying to raise £3,000. He's about a third of the way there at the moment, so it's a huge effort for a great cause, and we'll put the details out on Twitter, and we'll put the link on the YouTube video and stuff. So it's a great effort, great thing he's doing, and wish him all the best in his fundraising.
Here.
Indeed. Stick tap to Gareth, then we'll put all of the details on how you can support his endeavours on all our social media, and best of luck to him for the rest of the challenge. I'm sure he'll smash it.
But there's something
he's done almost 400 miles, and he's done almost 400 miles, and he's only halfway through the Todd Kelman episode. So and Franny, I tip my hat to you. You this is like being CSI Devils for the last 2 and a bit years. I don't know, since we've been doing the podcast. So take it away. For anyone who's listened to all our episodes, there's a running theme, and you've solved the mystery of a lifetime.
Yeah, it's been a big week. I've got him. And regular listeners will know the him that I'm talking about is the one, the only, the legendary One Punch. So I don't know why I didn't think of this before, but every good sports team needs a good statistician, and we have a good statistician. We've got Mark Finn. So I reached out to Mark Finn. I said, can you tell me what players we had playing during that first Super League year? Friendly games, everything. And he sent me over a list of players, and as soon as I saw it was second name down, the one below him was Glenn Anderson. I just put him in that company. But the guy, so the top one was Marcus Fabenko, and the second one down, and then as soon as I saw him, that is our guy. One Punch is unveiled as Grant Morrow.
Dun, 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 dun.
So I want to also tell you that Grant Morrow is from Vancouver. And when I looked up Ken Priestley, he is from Richmond in BC. And the distance between Richmond and where Grant Morrow lives is 9.6 miles. So you cannot tell me that this story where Ken Priestley skates with One Punch, now known as Grant Morrow, we're going to use his proper name, is made up. It's not. It's true. We found him on Hockey DB, 6'6", 190 pounds. He spent some time with North Battleford North Stars, but we found him. And not only that, but I've tracked him down on Facebook and live on the show. I know this is going to be backwards. Add friend. There it is. Friend request gone across to Grant Morrow. So we'll update that in another edition to see whether I got accepted or to see whether I got iced. And he's actually a listener of the show. And he's pretty pissed off at me.
I mean, that's I can't put into words how happy I am that we finally put this mystery to bed. But the second challenge now has to be getting him on the pod to talk to him about his memories of Brexit.
Yeah, it could be a short episode about his dad's career, which did span 2 games.
That's right. We need one,
and maybe 1 shift. But
maybe we just do a collection, so we get One Punch, Beavis, Cannonball, Disco Stew,
Cannonball.
Ronnie's on the board now. He's another one of the characters. He just made his debut in this episode. But Ronnie, we get all the characters in
One-Eyed Lee.
One-Eyed Lee. All of it.
Just keep an eye on them.
Yeah. And if anyone knows One-Eyed Al, then send them our way.
I just think we do that ultimate episode of all of my favorite people that I've met via your stories. One big episode.
Hey, do not forget our man in Hungary as well. The interpreter.
Disco Stew, wasn't it?
No, Disco Stew is the equipment manager.
Oh.
The guy in Hungary was
the guy who was a recovering alcoholic, and you.
We got on the Unicum. He'll come back to me.
I forgot his name. He's one of my favorite people.
Yeah, that's what Unicum does to you. Just bunch of men.
Anyway.
Well, I have to go back and listen to the pre-season episode now because that's where he made his debut. Bless him.
Yeah.
Who knows where he is? I bet you can't find him on Facebook.
Yeah, bet you can.
Tune in next week to see if Franny can find the recovering alcoholic from Hungary. Guys, it's been another great episode. It's got some momentum at the moment. We've been checking out guests and episodes like no one's business, and each one of them has been totally unique in their own way. So I guess we get our heads together and find out who's next to come behind the bench. That just leaves me, Gareth Hewish, on behalf of Mr. John Donovan.
Thank you, gents. It's been a pleasure.
Mr. Neil Francis.
Thanks all. Another good one in the can there.
Indeed. To say good evening. And as always, Producer Hubs, you get the very fine job of hitting play on Brass Bonanza.